Chapter 187. What a powerful aura! Is this the true power of the divine beast inheritance? In the martial arts arena, countless cultivators stared at Kang Linghong, who seemed to have transformed into an azure dragon. They were extremely shocked, especially the disciples who still had to fight. When they felt the terrifying aura, they might not even be able to move, let alone fight. How could Qin Hao, whose aura was clearly much weaker, resist? In everyone's opinion, Qin Hao was courting death by forcing Kang Linghong to this extent. Qin Hao stared at Kang Linghong, whose aura reached the heavens, and his pupils abruptly shrank. He could feel that Kang Linghong's aura was at least 3 times more terrifying than before. It was not something that a simple first-grade martial saint could compare to. Even a 3rd grade or 4th grade martial saint would not have any chance of survival if they met Kang Linghong. It was indeed very troublesome. The power of the Azure Dragon inheritance is indeed terrifying. A trace of seriousness flashed through Qin Hao's cold expression. Azure Dragon Sky-Shattering Claw. A terrifying aura engulfed the heavens and earth. Kang Linghong's eyes were cold. He did not give Qin Hao too much time to think. His mutated hand stretched forward. A dragon claw that was 100 feet long directly formed above Qin Hao and slammed down. The tyrannical aura contained an incomparably terrifying energy. It was suffocating. Perhaps in the next instant, Qin Hao's thin body would be torn apart by the dragon claw. Die! Seeing that the dragon claw had completely enveloped Qin Hao, Kang Linghong's killing intent surged. His 5 fingers suddenly grabbed at the air. The seemingly solid dragon claw suddenly grabbed at Qin Hao, who was completely enveloped. Boom! 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 The entire arena exploded around Qin Hao. 5 huge cracks appeared on the incomparably hard ground, closing in on Qin Hao from the outside. Such a terrifying destructive power caused countless people to be dumbfounded. In your dreams. Qin Hao suddenly raised his head and felt the dragon claws that were like mountains converging towards him from all directions, and he coldly spat out 2 words. His feet suddenly stomped on the ground, and with a bang, his entire body actually rose up from the ground before smashing out with his fist. 100 steps divine fist, break. Qin Hao let out a deep roar from his dantian. In an instant, the powerful fused energy was condensed to the extreme, causing Qin Hao's small body to suddenly shrink. An extremely condensed and terrifying aura rushed out from Qin Hao's fist like a meteor. Bang! Rumble. At that moment, Qin Hao's figure was completely surrounded by the dragon's claws. No one could see him. They could only hear Qin Hao's deep and angry roar. However, other than the true experts and Tan Tai Lian and the others who had absolute confidence in Qin Hao, almost everyone thought that Qin Hao would be destroyed by Kang Linghong's claw. No matter how strong a 9th-level martial grandmaster was, how strong could he be? How high could his battle prowess be? Under the encirclement of absolute power, no one could resist. However, following Qin Hao's roar, suddenly, a small fist shadow that could be ignored directly penetrated the core of the giant claw with a rumbling explosion. With an amazing speed, it directly blasted towards Kang Linghong, who was in the air. Such a small fist shadow actually broke through Kang Linghong's mountain-like dragon claw and directly penetrated it. What a condensed fist technique! It's clearly almost solid. At that moment, the experts on the rostrum all widened their eyes in shock. How could a 9th-level martial grandmaster be so strong? Leng Yihan, Meng Yi, Gao Jianfei, and the few disciples who had obtained the inheritance of the mythical beast and had the strength to compete for the championship all looked extremely shocked. Whoosh! Qin Hao did not give the crowd time to be shocked. The power of the 100 Steps Divine Fist, a unique skill of the martial arts world, under the stimulation of his own integrated energy, did not disappoint him. After breaking through the center of his opponent's terrifying dragon claw with one punch, it directly rushed out of the encirclement of the dragon claw like a cannonball and brazenly approached Kang Linghong, who had a shocked expression and scattered the remaining power of Qin Hao's punch. After a brief moment of shock, Kang Linghong's eyes flashed with a touch of anger. He snorted coldly and did not retreat at all. He took a step forward and, covered in scales, brazenly faced the attack. Bang! 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 Dense and muffled sounds of close combat immediately erupted on the stage. A human and a beast-like figure crisscrossed each other. Tens of thousands of fist shadows and claw shadows overlapped each other. The low and deep sounds of collisions did not seem like much at first. However, the area where the two figures passed by immediately exploded like thunder. Wave after wave of frightening energy storms caused the hearts of countless people to tremble in fear. Under the gazes of countless people, the two of them had already exchanged hundreds and thousands of blows in a short period of time. Chen Hao's slightly thin and small figure, in front of his opponent's monster-like figure, was actually not at a disadvantage at all. This scene not only shocked the audience in the martial arts practice field, but also the eyes of the elders on the rostrum. Their expressions were shocked. Just how strong was this Chen Hao's fleshly body? Especially at this moment, Chen Hao did not use the power of the Phoenix inheritance at all. He was completely relying on his own strength. This Chen Hao is actually so strong, this is too inconceivable. He still hasn't used the power of the Phoenix inheritance. Although it's of little value, what kind of concept would it be if he were to use it? He is only a rank 9 martial ancestor. To be able to reach the position of a seated participant as a rank 8 martial emperor, it's not strange for him to possess such battle power. The audience was dazzled by the battle. They were unable to see the movements of the two people at all. As they stared at the two figures, they began to discuss Chen Hao in shock. Dongfang Ting, Xian Xian, Tan Tai Lian, and the others who were familiar with Chen Hao were even more shocked. Especially when they thought of how Chen Hao, in a short few years, had rapidly risen from a small county Sesame Seed clan to the 100 Empire ranking list and obtained impressive results, they were even more shocked. Bang! Bang! Right at this moment, the two figures fell to the ground at the same time. It seemed that after an intense battle, the two of them had to take a short breather. It was only at this moment that the crowd was able to clearly see the appearance of the two people. To the shock of everyone, Chen Hao's clothes were actually completely undamaged at this moment, and his extraordinarily handsome face flickered with a piercingly cold and arrogant expression. His gaze was even fierce like a sword, and his aura was still heavy. On the other hand, Kang Linghong, who looked like a monster, did not have much of his exposed scales. However, his clothes were already in tatters, revealing many sparkling and lustrous scales. Even though Kang Linghong's aura did not weaken in the slightest, nor did he show any signs of being injured, his appearance at the very least indicated that he was already at a complete disadvantage in the previous exchange. Your physical body and strength are indeed very strong. However, you are still delusional if you want to defeat me. You can't even break through my defense. Could it be that you want to compete with me, a martial saint, in terms of aura endurance? Kang Linghong stared gloomily at Chen Hao as he spoke through gritted teeth. Chen Hao's battle strength had indeed completely exceeded his expectations. However, that was all there was to it. This was because Chen Hao's powerful attack had only torn his clothes under the protection of the dragon scales of his green dragon transformation. It had not harmed him at all. It was absolutely impossible for Chen Hao to defeat him. A martial saint's aura was prolonged. The speed at which they devoured the energy of heaven and earth was not something that a martial ancestor could compare to. He believed that as long as the battle continued, no matter how strong Chen Hao was, he would be the first to weaken. Furthermore, with his absolute defense, he was definitely in an undefeatable position. Furthermore, he had yet to use his ultimate move. This was only the group stage. His goal was to become the champion. If he used it now, he would be exposed too early. Especially when there were still 4 divine beast inheritors and martial saint experts waiting for him. Is that so? You seem to have forgotten that I have yet to use my sword. At this moment, the corners of Chen Hao's mouth curled up slightly as he spoke calmly. As he spoke, with a clang, a large sword shining with golden light appeared in his hand. The 5 elements golden sword. So what if I use my sword? Without absolute power, don't even think about breaking through my defense. Cut the crap. Take this. Hiss. Chen Hao's voice was cold as he took a step forward. He did not activate any sword light and was still going to fight head-on. What surprised the crowd even more was that Chen Hao was clearly attacking, but his aura did not increase. Instead, it was shockingly restrained. When Leng Yihan saw this scene, his pupils shrank and his eyes widened. Is this guy crazy? Of course, Leng Yihan knew what Chen Hao was trying to do. This was because at this moment, Leng Yihan had already sensed Chen Hao's aura that had merged with all things in the world. However, this kind of attack required one to conceal oneself and launch a surprise attack when the opponent was unaware. Only then would it be effective in killing the opponent in one strike. But Chen Hao attacking head-on like this, wasn't he courting death? One had to know that merging with all things in the world and restraining one's aura meant that one had given up on one's own defense. Any random attack from the opponent could be fatal. Before Leng Yihan could recover from his shock, he suddenly realized that Chen Hao's flying figure began to drift, leaving behind a series of afterimages. He seemed to be going left, then right, then forward, then backward. He seemed to be going left, then right, he seemed to be going right, then left. What kind of movement is this? This time, it was not only Leng Yihan who widened his eyes. Countless people in the martial arts practice field widened their eyes. This kind of movement did not rely on speed. It was truly ethereal and illusory, making it impossible for people to catch a trace of it. Kang Linghong, who was in the situation, was even more impressed. This was because he could not lock onto Chen Hao's aura at all. He could not determine which direction Chen Hao would attack from and which part of his body he would attack from. Bang! Kang Linghong did not dare to think too much. This was not the time to ponder over the mysteries of the secret techniques. Although he was not afraid of Chen Hao's attack, it would be inappropriate for him to be pierced by Chen Hao's sword. Therefore, at this moment, he did not care where Chen Hao would attack. It was important for him to move first and take the initiative. But, poof! What everyone did not expect, including Kang Linghong himself, was that when he moved, he directly bumped into Chen Hao's sword. What was even more unexpected was that Chen Hao's golden sword pierced through the unbelievably strong protective energy of the dragon scales like cutting through tofu. That heart-piercing cold made Kang Linghong's hair stand on end. He felt the terror of impending death. Ah! A terrified, furious, and earth-shattering scream suddenly erupted from Kang Linghong's mouth. Chapter 188. At this critical moment, the dragon scales all over Kang Linghong's body began to compress from his limbs towards his heart. Cracking sounds came from within his body as his bones and meridians underwent a strange change. At the same time, a violent energy that could topple mountains and overturn seas surged out from his body in all directions with a loud boom. Streaks of sharp rainbow-colored light turned into streaks of terrifying sword light and blasted towards Chen Hao. Bang bang bang. Kaboom. Following the terrifying explosion, Chen Hao's ethereal figure was sent flying backwards under the shocked cries of countless people. While he was still in the air, arrows of blood had already shot out from his body. Kang Linghong was also sent flying backwards. Chen Hao's golden sword was still embedded in his left chest. Chen Hao, Tan Tai Lian, Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, Ni Jianpain, Dong Fangting, and Leng Yihan all stood up in horror and cried out. Xian's face was also extremely shocked. She resisted the urge to cry out, but Fan Fang, who was beside her, smashed the hard stone table in front of him into powder with a bang. His eyes were dark and terrifying. With his high level of cultivation and amazing eyesight, he could naturally see that Chen Hao's body had been pierced by dozens of streaks of sword light. However, what surprised him was that the moment Chen Hao was pierced, his body seemed to twist strangely and not a single one of the streaks of sword light had managed to pierce through his vitals. But, with so many injuries and so much blood spurting out, even if he did not die, he would lose the ability to fight. And Kang Linghong? Kang Linghong had used his powerful green dragon transformation to forcefully deflect the sword that had pierced through his heart. Although he was also severely injured, compared to Chen Hao, he was much better off. Moreover, Kang Linghong was now under the power of the Green Dragon inheritance and would definitely still have a terrifying fighting capacity. Such injuries would not affect him in the short term. What did this mean? It meant that Chen Hao would be faced with the enraged Kang Linghong and be blasted into pieces without being able to fight back. How could Chen Hao die at the hands of others? Unfortunately, no one could stop it. Unless Chen Hao admitted defeat immediately, but at this moment, whether or not Chen Hao still had the ability to shout out the word, admit defeat, was a problem. Fan Fang's face was extremely twisted. This was definitely not what he wanted, definitely not. I want you dead. The threat of death caused Kang Linghong to completely lose his mind. His gloomy and angry voice suddenly sounded like a thunderclap that resounded throughout the entire training ground. As he spoke, his body gradually rose under the cover of the seven-colored light. At the same time, two ferocious and strange claws were changing in front of him. In an instant, a spiraling cyan rune rose up. The rune was octagonal, and the divine beast Azure Dragon was like a phantom soaring in the ninth heaven. At this moment, the energy of heaven and earth in the entire main arena suddenly surged violently and gathered towards the terrifying rune. His aura became more and more terrifying. The golden sword was still trembling in front of Kang Linghong's chest. He did not dare to take it, and he could not take it. At least, he could only do so after he killed Chen Hao. Such a strange and terrifying scene, in addition to the fact that he suddenly displayed an ultimate move that contained an aura of destruction, undoubtedly attracted everyone's attention. Everyone's eyes widened, filled with fear. Azure Dragon Seal, seeing that the claws had turned into sword fingers and he was shouting out the name of the secret technique, and with each word, the aura of the octagonal seal became several times more terrifying. Kang Linghong's sword fingers also gathered a bit of power behind him. As the words left his mouth, the sword fingers suddenly pointed towards Chen Hao. Die! Tan Tai Lien and the others screamed in horror. Everyone in the martial arts practice field widened their eyes and opened their mouths wide. Rumble! Roar! Accompanied by a terrifying explosion, the Azure Dragon in the octagonal seal suddenly let out a dragon's roar that resounded through the heavens and the earth. It actually flew out, as if it had condensed into a physical body and contained an extremely terrifying power. It rumbled and swept towards Chen Hao, who was lying on the ground. Everyone's gaze simultaneously looked towards Chen Hao at this moment. Tan Tai Lien, Dong Fangting, and the others' faces had already turned pale. This time, no matter how much confidence they had in Chen Hao, it was already useless. They had already lost all hope. How could Chen Hao, who was lying motionless on the ground and covered in blood, be able to resist it? Without a doubt, Chen Hao, who was like a resplendent rising star, would fall like a meteor in this battle. However, at this moment, what shocked everyone was that raging flames suddenly rose from Chen Hao, who was lying on the ground. Caw! A strange bird's cry suddenly sounded. Then, a rumbling explosion spread out. Raging flames instantly filled the entire arena, turning it into a sea of fire. Who said the Phoenix inheritance is useless? At this moment, Chen Hao's cold voice sounded from the sea of fire. No one saw his figure. They only saw that the sea of fire had transformed into a sea of blue flames that enveloped the roaring Azure Dragon. Terrifying explosions sounded continuously. After a full half a minute, there was finally no more sound. There was only the gradually weakening and dissipating flames, gradually revealing Chen Hao's figure. Other than that, there was nothing else. Yes, there was no Kang Linghong's figure. There was only floating ashes. Chen Hao's face was pale and his body trembled. Even his black eyes had become dim and lifeless. He was battered and exhausted. But even so, everyone's gaze towards Chen Hao was still incomparably shocked. The entire martial arts practice field was unusually quiet. After the shocked referee announced Chen Hao's victory, the instant the arena's boundary opened, Chen Hao strenuously waved his hand in the direction of Tan Tai Lien, Yang Fan, and the other three. He shouted in a low voice, "Young Fan." Tantai Lien used the fastest speed and the most covert method to wipe her eyes. With a whoosh, Young Fan transformed into a streak of light and charged toward the arena. He directly used his energy to envelop Chen Hao and flew him back to the contestant seating area. "Pills," Chen Hao said with difficulty. Tantai Lien immediately used her fastest speed to take out dozens of 8th-grade spirit pills. She directly used her mental power to envelop them into a string and flew them into Chen Hao's mouth. After swallowing the pills, Chen Hao directly entered into a state of cultivation. Tantai Lien, Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ni Jianping looked at each other before placing their palms on Chen Hao's back. At this moment, the four of them were surging with emotions. In the short span of 1 minute, their emotions had risen and fallen, then risen again. They had won, although it was a Pyrrhic victory. But in the end, they had survived and won. No one knew that this was not Chen Hao's original intention. Chen Hao was not so stupid as to merge with all things in the world and charge head-on. He had many ways to battle with Kang Linghong, but he chose to use such a risky method. Not only was he severely injured, but he also used the final move of the Phoenix inheritance, which directly made him a pauper. All the pills, including his own, and those obtained from killing Fan Yin and the other disciples, were all turned into nothingness. Impressive, impressive, so impressive. I can't believe I can be so powerful. Ha ha ha. Azure Dragon, crawl for me, or I'll whip you. Kakik. In Chen Hao's mind, the little bird placed its wings on its waist and puffed out its chest. Its human-like little eyes shone with a smug light as it stared at the weak behemoth in front of it and spoke with an arrogant smile. Impossible. Impossible. You two little birds are not my match even after joining forces. How is it possible? How can you defeat me and forcefully obtain the inheritance? How is it possible? The Azure Dragon's eyes shone with extreme shock, but it did not fear the Phoenix in front of it at all. It did not even change the way it addressed the Phoenix. Ignoring the bickering between the two, Chen Hao, who was immersed in healing his injuries, became even more curious about the existence in his mind. That existence had sent a message through the Phoenix, and Chen Hao had completely followed the will of that existence by merging with all things in the world. The golden sword had to be stabbed into the opponent's body, the opponent had to use the ultimate move, the Azure Dragon Seal, and completely summon the Azure Dragon True Body. He had to be severely injured and spit out blood essence. Chen Hao did not understand why this was necessary. He originally did not intend to agree, but the tempting conditions passed to him by the Phoenix made him agree. Chen Hao originally did not know the purpose of this, but now he understood. Capture the Azure Dragon and forcefully obtain its inheritance. He also understood that that existence was omniscient about his abilities, and even knew more about them than he did. But why do I have to almost die? Chen Hao still could not understand. Isn't this question simple? Treasure hunting sword spirit suddenly said when this thought appeared in Chen Hao's mind. Why? Of course it's to increase your strength. That thing has power but no strength. If you want it to unleash its power, it has to rely on your strength. You will understand this when you step into the golden elixir realm. This time, it directly burned all of your elixirs to capture the Azure Dragon. Naturally, it could not waste the opportunity to refine your body with the Nirvana flame. The rebirth of flames of desire is best when your body is severely injured, but you brat actually managed to avoid your vitals, which reduced the effect a little. Fortunately, it did not affect your vitals much. You will understand when your injuries recover. Good, good, good. Very good. At this moment, Fan Fong seemed to be Chen Hao's friend. When he saw that Chen Hao had turned the tables in such a way, he said excitedly. However, the malevolence and evil in his eyes sent chills down the spines of those around him. The nirvana of the Phoenix is so powerful. Isn't this an immortal body? Such heavy injuries, there were so many holes. Did you see, they are all gone now. It was only at this moment that the crowd began to discuss spiritedly. The elders on the rostrum were all frowning in confusion. The others could not see it, but how could they not see it with their cultivation? Chen Hao had clearly only summoned a phoenix, a single phoenix. However, the final attack had condensed the nirvana flame that could only be condensed when a phoenix was connected to its body. This was simply too strange. It was something that was impossible even in legends. Yet, it was happening right in front of their eyes. Chapter 189. As the battle between Chen Hao and Kang Linghong came to an end, all the possible top 10 battles in the group competition were over. On the morning of the second day, the group competition was finally over, and the top 20 were decided. Gao Jianfei, who was ranked first on the Black Tower tablet, Meng Yi, and Leng Yihan, who was ranked third, as well as the inheritor of the mythical beast inheritance, all advanced. Tan Tai Lian originally had no hope of advancing, but because Chen Hao had killed Kang Linghong, she was once again lucky to advance as the second in the group. Yang Fan was ranked sixth in the group. Considering his cultivation level, this result was already something to be proud of. In the quiet training room, Chen Hao sat cross-legged. Dense qi shrouded his body, rippling with vigorous and pure energy. Walala, Chen Hao, who appeared to be calm, actually emitted the sound of flowing water from within his body. The liquid energy was like a small river that surged endlessly within his meridians. Moreover, it seemed to be moving faster and faster. Chen Hao's mind sensed the changes within his body that had started on its own, and he understood what this represented, causing a trace of excitement to faintly suffuse his heart. After that, he calmed down, and his mind became clear as he allowed his ocean-like dantian to erupt with a surging torrent that gushed into his meridians, and it grew and multiplied endlessly as it continuously completed circulation after circulation. The energy flowing into his meridians became more and more vigorous and pure, and its speed became faster and faster. After circulating through his meridians, it was as if 10,000 streams were returning to the sea, and when it returned to his dantian again, its speed was even more astonishing. The sound of flowing water gradually turned into the terrifying sound of raging waves beating against the shore. It was also at this moment that the liquid energy core in Chen Hao's dantian suddenly set off an energy whirlpool, producing an extremely terrifying devouring power. Streams of energy that were rapidly flowing through his meridians suddenly stopped circulating under this terrifying devouring power, and frantically rushed back into his dantian one after another. Boom! An explosion occurred in Chen Hao's mind and dantian at the same time. Even if the conditions were right, at this time, Chen Hao did not dare to have the slightest bit of negligence. All of his mind merged into the upper dantian of his mind and the lower dantian of his dantian, and his body also began to hum and vibrate at high speed. Sounds of explosions, accompanied by the pain of his upper and lower dantian and meridians collapsing, Chen Hao could clearly feel that the dual barriers of the fusion of martial arts and will were gradually loosening under the continuous impact of the monstrous waves. Time passed second by second. Boom! After a full 2 hours, the fusion barrier, which was many times tougher than the barriers of ordinary cultivators, finally exploded with a boom. The surging energy in Chen Hao's body, which was on the verge of exploding, suddenly burst out. A dazzling 7-colored protective aura also appeared around Chen Hao's body with a boom. The surging energy suddenly seemed to flow into a wider channel. Although it didn't weaken at all, it turned into a slowly flowing river. The pain of Chen Hao's body exploding gradually disappeared, and he returned to calmness. Chen Hao let out a long breath, opening his eyes. 2 bright 7-colored rays of light flashed and disappeared. His handsome face had a trace of excitement, and the aura around his body was many times stronger. Chen Hao felt the vigorous energy in his body, and with a trace of surprise, his eyes focused. He lightly struck out with his palm, and suddenly a 7-colored, incomparably condensed palm shadow slowly flew out, crossing a distance of more than 10 feet, and lightly pressed against the wall that contained the powerful restriction. Pang! Kacha kacha! After a dull explosion, accompanied by cracking sounds, the wall of the training room actually began to crack like a spider web. The saint level is so strong. Chen Hao looked at the creeping cracks on the wall, his expression full of surprise as he murmured. Chen Hao was very clear about how strong the walls of the training room were. These days he had not stopped attacking, but to leave a shallow mark was already the limit. And now, he had only used 30% of his strength, and it had caused such a terrifying destructive power. It should be enough now, right? Chen Hao said in his mind. It should be enough now, right? In Chen Hao's mind, the little bird raised its head and repeated Chen Hao's question. A moment later, its human-like eyes flashed with a touch of joy. Chen Hao, it's barely enough. With the support of this phoenix and the azure dragon's energy, it should be enough. He said that you should try to restrain your aura as much as possible. Otherwise, if the opponent directly admits defeat, there will be no other way. I'll try my best, Chen Hao said. After that, he withdrew from his mind. How could it be so simple to gather the 5 divine beasts? The others were not fools. After seeing him kill them one by one, who would dare to come forward? What's more, he was not a homicidal maniac. Although they were all competitors, Chen Hao still felt a little uncomfortable using this method to improve himself. It did not matter if he killed Kang Linghong. He had asked for it. He had wanted to kill Chen Hao in the first place, and his arrogant manner was also courting death. But what about the others? If they were not as arrogant and despotic as Kang Linghong, no matter how cold and ruthless Chen Hao was, he would not have been able to do it. After all, these people had spent the blood and sweat of countless people to reach this point. They had also put in a lot of effort. Moreover, there was one more thing. The killing intent was too strong now. Perhaps even the elders on the platform would not be willing to see it. Although there were no restrictions in the rules of the competition, the disciples who had reached this point were all rare geniuses on the 100 Empire ranking. They were also disciples that these sects wanted to obtain. Chen Hao did not know that his state of mind had unknowingly changed a little after his sudden enlightenment. And it was this change that had brought him closer to the true Great Tao. The next day, the sky was clear and the sun was like fire. The 100 Empire ranking had also reached the time of the true peak showdown. Who would be the champion of the 100 Empire ranking? The crowd still did not have a definite answer in their hearts. However, the few contestants who had the strength to fight for the championship had already surfaced. Leng Yihan, who had comprehended the law of space and had astonishing battle prowess, was one of the strongest contenders. Although Leng Yihan had not obtained the inheritance of a divine beast and had not become a martial sage, no one dared to underestimate him. His voice was the strongest. Someone who had truly comprehended the law of space was definitely strong. Furthermore, Leng Yihan's shocking sword move was truly breathtaking. Among the hundreds of thousands of spectators, there were many low-grade martial sages who could clearly sense great danger from Leng Yihan. Next was Chen Hao, as well as the inheritors of the Vermilion Bird, White Tiger, and Qilin Divine Beasts' inheritances. Next was the Xuanwu inheritor, Li Yuran, who was an unknown factor. When Li Yuran met Gao Jianfei, he had chosen to admit defeat. However, he had not completed the first step of the Xuanwu fusion. The other inheritors of the Divine Beasts had already completed the fusion. Li Yuran should be able to complete it quickly as well. As long as he completed it before the battle of the top 20, he still had a high chance of winning. Aside from these people, even Gao Jianfei and Meng Yi were no longer in the list of contenders for the championship. Even though they were the first and second ranked experts on the Black Pagoda steel, it was useless. They were only at the peak of martial ancestor realm. Although their battle prowess was strong, how could they resist a martial sage who had obtained the inheritance of a divine beast? The round-robin of the top 20 officially begins today. In order to avoid wasting time and unnecessary deaths, the arbitration team has decided to first select the participants. The list of the top 20 will be based on the group that qualified. Gao Jianfei, Li Yuran. After Lu Wuxiang announced the top 20 participants, he continued, "Now, for the participants whose names I call out, please confirm your opponent and who you want to admit defeat to." Gao Jianfei. Hearing the referee's words, Gao Jianfei immediately stood up with a serious expression. "When I call out your name, you answer whether you want to fight or not. Do you understand?" "Understood." Gao Jianfei replied in a low voice. The so-called selection was to delete the battles that required the participants to admit defeat. This would prevent them from wasting time and also allow them to arrange the battles accordingly. Of course, the participants who had decided to fight could still choose to admit defeat when it was time to go on stage. After all, as the battle progressed, the participants would naturally be able to understand their opponent's true strength more clearly. Then, it would be reasonable to make a new decision. It was not necessary to fight at this moment. However, those who said they would not fight were already admitting defeat and could not be changed. Soon, all the participants were selected. As expected, the participants who decided to fight were Leng Yihan, Chen Hao, Li Yuran of the Black Tortoise Inheritance, Ao Huaguang of the Kirin Inheritance, Yu Qiyu of the White Tiger Inheritance, and Chu Liqin of the Vermilion Bird Inheritance. The first choice was Gao Jianfei. Although he felt embarrassed, he still gave up the battle with Leng Yihan. He dared to challenge Leng Yihan back then, but Leng Yihan was now a martial ancestor realm. He was not an idiot and naturally did not want to die. Other than Leng Yihan, he also gave up on the other 5. Meng Yi also gave up on 6. Other than Chen Hao and the other 5, Tan Tai Lian also gave up on Gao Jianfei and Meng Yi. The others made the same choice as Tan Tai Lian. The final result of the selection was the top 8. The top 6 were Leng Yihan and Chen Hao. The 6 did not fight, which was equivalent to 14 victories. The 7th and 8th were Gao Jianfei and Meng Yi. Of the top 6, the 2 of them had admitted defeat. The bottom 12 had all admitted defeat to them. Whichever of the 2 won would be 7th. In other words, the 2 of them only needed one battle to end all the matches on the 100 Empire ranking. After a while, the names of the battles were listed. The great battle officially began. The first battle, Gao Jianfei against Meng Yi. Please come to the arena. Whoosh! The 2 of them immediately flew to the arena as fast as lightning. Coward, who was it that vowed to fight junior brother Leng Yihan on the 100 Empire ranking? Meng Yi said as he looked at Gao Jianfei with disdain after he entered the arena. Humph! A wise man submits to circumstances. Do you think I'm a brainless idiot like you? You want to use such words to provoke me? You're too stupid. Come, I'll show you the ranking on the pagoda stele. I, Gao Jianfei, am truly superior to you. This is the first update. Friends with monthly votes, please support Wushan. If you don't have monthly votes, please cast your daily recommendation votes. Thank you. If you like this work, please come to Qidian.com to cast your recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 190. This should have been the battle that everyone looked forward to the most. Unfortunately, the rise of Leng Yihan, Chen Hao, and the inheritors of the divine beasts made Gao Jianfei and Meng Yi, the 2 super geniuses who originally occupied the top of the pagoda and were feared by countless disciples on the 100 Empire ranking, seem a little boring at this moment. After a short bickering, the 2 of them started a vigorous battle. Their powerful strength and combat power were indeed unmatched within the martial arts grandmaster realm. Their ultimate skills were endless, causing the spectators with low cultivations to be shocked. However, compared to the battle between Chen Hao and Kang Linghong, it was still a level lower. The battle lasted for a full 10 minutes before it finally ended. The steady and solid Meng Yi defeated Gao Jianfei by a small margin and obtained 7th place, while Gao Jianfei was 8th. Immediately after, it was the battle between the weaker disciples like Tan Tai Lian. Tan Tai Lian displayed the power of the phoenix and easily defeated her opponent. After these people fought one after another, it was finally the battle between the 6 experts. The 8th battle, Li Yuran vs Ao Huaguang. Please come to the arena. Following the loud voice of the referee, Li Yuran and Ao Huaguang, who had obtained the inheritance of the Black Tortoise and the Qilin respectively, immediately flew onto the arena. The martial arts practice field, which had been silent for a long time, once again emitted a majestic vitality. Countless people raised their spirits and looked at the arena with bright eyes. Although Li Yuran was the last to successfully merge with the divine beast, he was only 2 or 3 days later than the others. Furthermore, his inheritance was the black tortoise, which had the strongest defense among the 5 divine beasts. Against the Qilin inheritor, Ao Huaguang, who had the most powerful and terrifying power, no one could be sure who would win. Boom. Following the referee's command to start the battle, the two of them, who had cold expressions, did not waste any more words. Waves of abnormally powerful 7-colored origin power radiance immediately spread out like a tide. At the same time, the shadows of the divine beasts appeared above their heads. One of them was bone-chilling and instantly caused the temperature of the entire arena to drop below freezing point, stirring up gusts of strong wind. The other one was powerful like a mountain. It emanated an aura that was heavy and vast like a mountain, and it was filled with strength. It forced the numerous strong gales to retreat 300 m away, and it was even to the extent that the icy cold aura was unable to approach it in the slightest. Before they even made a move, the powerful and terrifying aura and pressure from the two gods caused countless people to be shocked. Up until now, although Li Yuro and Ao Huaguang had displayed the power of the divine beast's inheritance, they had not used the power of the inheritance in their battles after they had advanced to martial sage. At this moment, facing a powerful opponent, the two of them no longer held back. Hiss. When the two people's auras were raised to the peak, 2 illusions of divine beasts appeared above their heads and immediately merged into their bodies. Li Yuro of the black tortoise inheritance seemed to have put on a tortoiseshell armor. The tortoiseshell shone with an icy blue crystal light and aura. Just by looking at its appearance, one could tell how strong its defense was. But that appearance, however, he did not dare to flatter him. If that was not a living tortoise, what was it? On the other hand, Ao Huaguang, who was originally like an iron tower and looked like a ferocious beast, became even more ferocious and terrifying after the Qilin's illusion merged with his body. His entire body was covered with sparkling yellow scales, and his strength was extremely powerful. Come on. Let's see if your tortoiseshell is harder or if my strength is stronger. As Ao Huaguang spoke, he took a step forward. Instantly, the mountain shook and the earth shook. His huge body was like a small mountain that rumbled as he charged toward Li Yuro. A trace of coldness flashed in Li Yuro's eyes. Although the black tortoise inheritance was good, it was indeed an existence that could not be discussed. Faced with words like tortoiseshell he really did not have any temper. Therefore, he did not say anything. With a whoosh, he directly struck out a palm at Ao Huaguang as fast as lightning. Humph. Ao Huaguang's huge palm bent and stretched out, and an incomparably vigorous yuan qi condensed in his palm. It violently smashed Li Yuro's attack and advanced at high speed. The Qilin's strongest point was undoubtedly its strength, but its defense was equally strong. It actually relied on a pair of fleshy palms that were covered with scales to collide with Li Yuro's sharp and cold energy, and rapidly approached. A terrifying explosion accompanied by circles of strong wind swept out. In an instant, the two of them were in close combat. The power of Ao Huaguang's huge fist rapidly expanded, forcing Li Yuro to continuously retreat. However, Li Yuro's expression did not have the slightest bit of fear. This level of strength, under the protection of the tortoiseshell, caused little damage to the body. So what if he was strong? It was really not possible to do anything to him. But unfortunately, Li Yuro also could not do anything to the terrifying strength of Ao Huaguang. Looking at the terrifying battle between the two of them, everyone was still trembling with fear at the beginning, but after a few minutes, they became numb. One of them had a terrifying attack, and the other had a strong defense. Unexpectedly, neither of them had a change in expression, and they could not hurt the other in the slightest. It made everyone feel that it was neither painful nor itchy. Finally, when the neither painful nor itchy battle lasted for a full 15 minutes, the fiery Ao Huaguang could not bear it anymore. If this continued, the one who would lose would definitely be him. Li Yuro, who was like a coward, did not even attack at this moment. It was obvious that he wanted to exhaust him to death. Therefore, Ao Huaguang did not continue. With a loud shout, his huge body suddenly rose up. With a rumble, his originally mountain-like body suddenly grew several times larger at this moment. Roar! A resounding bestial roar that was filled with endless pressure suddenly erupted. Ao Huaguang finally used the strongest move of the Qilin inheritance, Qilin Seal. Immediately, a force that was like a mountain and an ocean filled the entire arena. The violent energy of heaven and earth crazily surged. A mountain that was hundreds of feet tall and hundreds of feet wide, shining with a dazzling earthy yellow light, quickly condensed above Ao Huaguang's hands. At this moment, Ao Huaguang was like a ferocious Hercules with a ferocious gaze and a ferocious face. The moment the mountain condensed, it fiercely smashed down on Li Yuro's head. Die! Accompanied by Ao Huaguang's loud shout, the huge mountain crashed down with a loud bang. In your dreams. Li Yuro, who was already prepared, activated the black tortoise seal at the same time when Ao Huaguang used his ultimate move. After a loud shout, his arms, legs, and head suddenly shrank into the tortoise shell, and at this moment, the tortoise shell expanded at a terrifying speed. In the blink of an eye, it was like an incomparably huge pot lid that was upside down on the arena. On it, a dazzling crystal light shone and was covered with black tortoise patterns. At this moment, everyone in the martial arts practice field widened their eyes and stared at the terrifying scene of the mountain smashing down on the pot lid. Without a doubt, after this attack, the victor would be decided. If the tortoise shell was smashed, then Ao Huaguang, who had exhausted all his energy, would win. If the tortoise shell was firm, then it might be a draw, because with such a terrifying ultimate move, even the defensive Li Yuro would definitely have exhausted all his energy. Bang! Rumble! The moment the mountain smashed down on the pot lid, the mountain shook and the earth shook. The entire martial arts practice field, which was dozens of miles in radius, trembled violently. Some of the spectators who didn't have much cultivation were directly shaken half a meter from their seats and let out countless terrified screams. On the main arena, dust and smoke billowed. The huge mountain stood tall and upright, and the tortoise shell's shadow couldn't be seen. Smashed to death. At this moment, countless people thought in horror. This scene was obviously the tortoise shell being smashed flat, and Li Yuro, who was hiding inside, must have been crushed into a meat paste. However, a few seconds later, when the mountain formed by energy began to dissipate, what surprised everyone was that a large piece of the hard arena floor actually appeared. At the same time, it also gradually dissipated, revealing a huge deep pit. In the pit, Li Yuro stood up with blood at the corner of his mouth, battered and exhausted. And Ao Huaguang, who was standing in the air, fell to the ground with a bang. His face was also pale, and he stood up shakily. The final result was a draw. No one had the strength to attack again. Godly tortoise. Mother, isn't this Li Yuro in an invincible position? If he tightens his tortoise shell, no one can hurt him. Too awesome. Fortunately, his attack wasn't strong, otherwise, Ao Huaguang would definitely lose. Countless people in the crowd were discussing. The defense of a cowardly tortoise was really too strong, too shocking. One had to know that the floor of the arena contained extremely strong restrictions, and the material was precious ore, but it was smashed into a huge pit that was several meters deep and tens of feet wide. And Li Yuro had only exhausted his strength and suffered some injuries. Chen Hao frowned slightly, staring at the huge pit, a faint light flashing in his eyes. Obviously, even Chen Hao wasn't sure if he could break Li Yuro's defense at this moment. Taking a deep breath, Chen Hao turned to look at Leng Yihan. He saw Leng Yihan also staring at the deep pit, but immediately after, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he lazily leaned back in his seat. It seems that his realm has increased again. Seeing this scene, Chen Hao couldn't help but think to himself. The last time he saw Leng Yihan, Chen Hao already knew that he was far inferior to Leng Yihan. At this moment, after half a year of training, Chen Hao was sure that he could catch up to Leng Yihan. But now, Leng Yihan's expression told Chen Hao that he had enough confidence to break Li Yuro's defense. Thinking of Leng Yihan's stunning sword, Chen Hao frowned slightly and thought to himself, what if these guys are killed by Leng Yihan in advance? If that's really the case, my chances will be even lower. Chen Hao hesitated slightly, but finally decided to greet him. Brother Leng. Chen Hao condensed his voice into a line and transmitted it to Leng Yihan, who was not far away. Leng Yihan was slightly taken aback and looked in Chen Hao's direction. Can I ask you for a small favor? Help? Of course, if you win against me, it'll be your request. If you lose, it'll be 2 of my requests. Anything is fine. Just say it. Leng Yihan's lips curled up slightly. He seemed to be very straightforward, but his words were very stingy. The reason for this was that Leng Yihan wasn't sure if he could defeat Chen Hao, who had completely exceeded his expectations. Second update. Requesting recommendation tickets, monthly tickets. Thank you. Chapter 191. Okay. If you meet Li Yuro and the other divine beast inheritors, don't kill them. Just defeat them. Chen Hao said readily. If he really asked Leng Yihan for help for no reason, Chen Hao would be embarrassed. After all, he only had a relationship with Leng Yihan because of the nameless old man. Moreover, Chen Hao knew that Leng Yihan was the kind of person who cared about fair exchanges. Otherwise, he would not have used the Yin origin stone to exchange for the statue. Don't kill them. Defeat them. What do you want to do? Leng Yihan looked at Chen Hao from afar. His eyes were as bright as swords, and he asked with a trace of doubt. It's useful. Since you agreed, it's settled. It's my turn. Okay. Leng Yihan frowned slightly and replied. At this moment, the referee called Chen Hao's name. The 9th match, Chen Hao against Chu Liqin. Chu Liqin, the inheritor of the divine beast Vermilion Bird. The Vermilion Bird was the divine beast closest to the phoenix among the 5 divine beasts. Not only were their energy attributes similar, but their appearances were also very similar. The Vermilion Bird's inheritance, compared to the phoenix's weakness of needing 2 people to work together, was naturally much stronger. If there was no battle between Chen Hao and Kang Linghong, there was no doubt that Chu Liqin's chances of winning would be higher in everyone's hearts. But at this moment, it was hard to say who would win and who would lose. Chen Hao's chances of winning were slightly higher. After all, Chen Hao's combat strength was stronger than Chu Liqin's. But it was only a little. If they both used their ultimate moves, it was really hard to say who would win. Chen Hao was able to defeat Kang Linghong, but it was just a narrow victory. Whoosh whoosh. Chen Hao and Chu Liqin appeared on the arena at almost the same time. Their eyes met, neither giving way to the other. Obviously, both of them were very confident, especially Chen Hao. This time, Tan Tai Yan and the others who were familiar with Chen Hao felt extremely surprised. A wisp of arrogance actually appeared on Chen Hao's handsome and extraordinary face. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and it was filled with an arrogant, evil, and cold aura. His deep black eyes were filled with naked provocation. Chu Liqin, you're just a puny vermilion bird, so you should just admit defeat obediently. Even the azure dragon was blasted into smithereens by my phoenix, so you're on par with him at best. If you don't want to die, then it's not too late. Otherwise, Chen Hao, won't show mercy to the fairer sex. Chen Hao's lips slightly curled up as he spoke dismissively. That expression, that appearance, was simply arrogant to the extreme. He was the typical type of person who was looking for trouble. This scene made Dongfang Ting, Tan Tai Lian, and even Leng Yihan frown slightly, feeling very strange. Was this still the Chen Hao he knew? Are you trying to intimidate me? I, Chu Liqin, am not one to be intimidated. It's just a phoenix's nirvana. Others may not know, but do you think I don't know? No matter what secret technique you use, don't even think about defeating me. I'd like to see who's going to die. Chu Liqin said coldly. Her face shone with anger, and her fighting spirit began to soar wildly. If that's the case, then I'll send you to the afterlife. Chen Hao said casually, but his face began to shine with a trace of seriousness. In the eyes of the crowd, it seemed that Chen Hao really wanted to intimidate Chu Liqin into admitting defeat, but in reality, he had no confidence in defeating Chu Liqin at all. You talk too much nonsense. Chu Liqin said coldly when the referee announced the start of the match. As she spoke, there was a boom, and flames spewed out from her body. In an instant, her entire person was merged into the protection of the flames. At the same time, Chu Liqin opened her hand in the air. Instantly, a long river of flames spewed out from her palm and condensed into a huge flaming demon palm that rumbled toward Chen Hao. What a powerful energy! Chen Hao was slightly shocked. The aura of heavenly fire. At the same time, Little Bird's shocked voice sounded in Chen Hao's mind. She actually comprehended half a step into heavenly fire. Could it be that she has a fire spirit body? What do you mean? Chen Hao's figure suddenly floated up as he used the ultimate martial arts technique, the wave-like carefree steps, and asked in his mind at the same time. The flames of the vermilion bird and us phoenixes are nirvana flames. As the successor's fusion with us increases, the level of nirvana flames will also gradually increase. The highest level is nirvana heavenly fire. This can only be achieved at the 9th step of fusion. However, this successor is clearly only at the 1st step of fusion, but the flames she emits contain the aura of heavenly fire. There's only one possibility, and that is that her physical body is the fire spirit body that is most compatible with the vermilion bird's inheritance. Chen Hao. Whether you can win this time will depend on whether you can withstand her flames. No wonder you're so confident. It's only interesting when there's a challenge. Chen Hao said and cut off the connection with Little Bird. His eyes shone with a strong fighting spirit. You still want to use this kind of footwork to dodge? I'd like to see how you dodge. Sea of Purgatory Flames. Seeing that Chen Hao's figure was erratic and dodging her flaming demon hand, Chu Liqin snorted coldly. Her hands suddenly crossed in front of her and tore apart. Boom! In an instant, the flaming demon hand that missed exploded. At the same time, countless flaming demon hands shot out from Chu Liqin's hands like a string of cannons. They flew in all directions and exploded when they reached a certain location. Huff! 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 In just a breath's time, the entire arena had turned into a sea of flames. Billowing heat waves swept out from the arena. Even the powerful restrictions of the arena were unable to completely conceal the heat waves. The temperature of the entire martial arts practice field suddenly rose by several times. An invisible pressure made the breathing of some of the audience members with weaker cultivations quicken. They felt as if they couldn't breathe. What a terrifying flame! Feeling Chu Liqin's terrifying power, many people's expressions became extremely shocked. The power that Chu Liqin displayed this time was much stronger than the sea of flames that she released when she was in the martial ancestor realm. Her aura was so terrifying even through the arena's protective boundary. How would Chen Hao, who was in the depths of the flames, feel? Split. In the arena, Chen Hao, who was engulfed in flames, stopped his erratic figure. He bent his knees, took a feint, opened his palms, and drew arc-like trajectories in front of him that seemed to be slow but was actually fast. His body moved with his palms. His body suddenly shook, creating afterimages in a small area, causing his body to become blurry. At this moment, Chen Hao's palms suddenly slapped outwards. Countless palm shadows condensed into an invisible barrier, forcibly blocking the surging flames. What was even more strange was that these flames actually began to revolve around Chen Hao under the gentle and smooth palm shadows of Chen Hao. They were actually unable to approach Chen Hao at all. In a moment, the flames around him became more and more condensed. They were especially bright in the sea of flames. Condense. Although Chu Liqin was shocked that Chen Hao had once again used a strange unique skill to block her flames, she did not care at all. She had launched an all-around attack. She did not expect to be able to restrain Chen Hao at all. She only wanted to break Chen Hao's erratic and unpredictable magical footwork. At this moment, she had already achieved her goal. With a furious roar, under Chu Liqin's control, the sea of flames in the entire arena suddenly began to converge toward Chen Hao at an astonishing speed. One split, one condensed, and they erupted almost at the same time. Moreover, when the sea of flames appeared, the crowd could no longer see Chen Hao's figure. They only saw a ball of flames becoming more and more condensed. Because of this, except for Chu Liqin and Chen Hao, almost everyone in the entire martial arts practice field thought that Chu Liqin had used the flames to trap Chen Hao. With Chu Liqin's oppression, all the flames converged toward Chen Hao, completely imprisoning Chen Hao in the flames. Wow! Impressive, impressive. What unique skill did Chen Hao use? It's too impressive. Azure Dragon, are you still not convinced? A master with such talent is much better than that fellow of yours. Ha! In Chen Hao's mind, the little bird, who was always on standby, spoke to the Azure Dragon who was continuously providing it with energy. Even if I'm convinced, I'm not convinced by you. What are you so proud of? If I were you, I could save Chen Hao a lot of effort, you little bird with a small brain. Who are you scolding? You're just a little snake, where's your high IQ? If you have the guts, say it. If it's useful to say it, you'll be number 2. You're the fucking number 2. Leave it to and Shao Ke, they're more suitable. Anyway, I'm leaving, you can be your boss. Tell me, what's the plan? The little bird said. These fellows had been in contact with humans for too long. Although they did not have the temperament of humans, they had more or less assimilated some human habits. Therefore, they were rather proficient in scolding people in certain aspects. Are you an idiot? Don't you know how to provoke the vermilion bird? Provoking it will naturally affect the inheritor. As long as its power explodes to a certain level, the inheritor will be able to resist using the vermilion bird seal. That makes sense, Kiki. When the little bird heard the Azure Dragon's words, its eyes flashed with a hint of craftiness as it let out 2 strange cries. Immediately after, the little bird began to stimulate its energy in Chen Hao's body without asking for permission from Chen Hao. Boom! Chen Hao, who was using the fused energy to activate the Taiji mysteries of the pugilistic world's ultimate technique, suddenly spewed out intense flames from his body. In an instant, the phoenix's flames entered Chu Liqin's flames. The instant the 2 types of energy came into contact, the phoenix and the vermilion bird's senses were immediately connected. Little bird, Shao Ke, number 2, if you have the guts, come out and fight this phoenix directly. Back then, this phoenix and the phoenix were on par with you, but now, this phoenix alone will defeat you. Kiki. Bullshit, you and your lover aren't my match, and you alone? Dream on. If you have the guts, come out. Stop being so wishy-washy, do you want to learn from that cowardly turtle? You seem very similar. Shao Ke. Alright. Just you wait, I'll make you wait another 1,000 or 10,000 years to find an inheritor. Boom. The irritable vermilion bird was so angry that its lungs were about to explode. Similarly, without Chu Liqin's orders, it madly gathered its energy. In an instant, Chu Liqin felt the flames in her body burn fiercely, as if her body was about to explode. This terrifying power caused Chu Liqin's fighting spirit to soar madly. She watched as all the flames gathered towards Chen Hao, but they seemed to be completely blocked by Chen Hao's strange method, unable to move forward at all. Under the terrifying rotation, she even felt as if she had lost control. Chu Liqin did not hesitate any longer. Kiki. A strange bird's cry that resounded through the heavens suddenly erupted from Chu Liqin's body, and the vermilion bird phantom flew out from her head. Third update. Brothers and sisters who still have monthly votes and recommendation votes, please vote for Dark Mountain, thank you. I already have 23 votes today, can I still have 17 votes? Chapter 192. Let's see how you're going to block it. Chu Liqin stared at the rapidly spinning giant fireball. Following the explosion of the vermilion bird's energy, she took a step forward, formed a seal with both hands, and suddenly blasted it out. Vermilion bird seal. The moment Chu Liqin condensed the vermilion bird seal, violent flames erupted like a volcano. In an instant, the endless flames, containing terrifying power and pressure, swept towards Chen Hao. Boom! The flames that contained the aura of the heavenly fire were indeed extremely powerful. The moment the vermilion bird seal was used, its momentum was terrifying. The raging flames had completely turned a deep blue color. Even the space within the stage started to distort, rippling violently as if it could not withstand the high temperature of the flames and was about to collapse. Go for me. Sensing that Chu Liqin had unleashed the vermilion bird seal, Chen Hao's expression was calm and unperturbed. Amidst the flames, his two palms were drawing graceful arcs. At this moment, his body suddenly trembled, and his palms instantly transformed into numerous afterimages. Softness turned to toughness as he abruptly struck out. Boom! The spinning giant fireball suddenly separated from Chen Hao's body like a tornado, setting off monstrous waves of fire. Ga! At the same time, the shadow of the phoenix flew out from above Chen Hao's head and let out a cry that resounded through the heavens and earth. The terrifying nirvana flame instantly condensed into the phoenix seal. It contained an incomparably terrifying energy as it whistled towards the vermilion bird seal. How is this possible? Sensing the power of the phoenix, the vermilion bird that had condensed the seal was filled with shock. Fire, it was the nirvana flames that were of a lower level than it, but the energy contained within was so vigorous that it had reached an inconceivable realm. What made it even more surprised was that it seemed to have caught a trace of familiar energy. That energy was definitely something that only the Azure Dragon possessed. The wood attribute was extremely derived from the wind attribute, and because of this, when the three types of energy were superimposed, fire would burn wood, and wind would blow fire, causing its power to increase by many times. How could the vermilion bird not be shocked? However, the vermilion bird seal had already condensed, and it was too late to stop. Whoosh! Just as the two ultimate moves were about to collide, Chen Hao was like a gust of wind that blended into the world. Using the carefree steps, he held the invincible golden crystal sword in his hand. Withstanding the endless flames that contained the aura of the heavenly fire, he was as fast as lightning, silently stabbing towards Chu Liqin's right chest. At this moment, all of Chu Liqin's attention was focused on activating the vermilion bird seal, and the energy in her body was being crazily extracted. How could she have known that Chen Hao, who had used the phoenix seal, could still withdraw? This was absolutely inconceivable. This was because any cultivator would not be able to divert their attention when they performed such an ultimate technique that completely surpassed their own level. Not to mention, he had to multitask to escape and attack the enemy at the same time. But Chen Hao did it. This was because not only did he have the Azure Dragon's energy to support the little bird, he also had the mysterious existence in his mind to control it. However, Chen Hao's figure had indeed disappeared from the spot. Chu Liqin's eyes widened, and all the hairs on her body stood on end. Although she did not understand how Chen Hao did it, she knew that she was now in absolute danger. Someone who had used the phoenix seal and still had the energy to attack her body, how could she resist? I concede. Without any hesitation, Chu Liqin frantically activated the vermilion bird seal, and at the same time she could not move, she cried out in alarm. Unfortunately, before she could say the word lose, a dazzling golden light suddenly appeared in front of her. Chu Liqin's eyes widened in shock, and her eyes were filled with unwillingness and anger. Risking the backlash of the vermilion bird seal, she sent out an attack behind her. Poof! But even so, her full and round breasts were still pierced through by the treasured sword behind her. A dazzling golden sword tip was revealed, and then it disappeared. The sword was drawn and sheathed, extremely fast. The moment the sword was drawn, Chu Liqin felt a terrifying devouring power that caused the essence blood in her body to spurt out, turning into a blood arrow that flew towards the vermilion bird seal. Right chest. Not the left chest. This was the only thing that made Chu Liqin feel fortunate, but also slightly puzzled. Without a doubt, her desperate attack had been effective, and it had hit Chen Hao. But Chu Liqin was clear that in the process of the vermilion bird seal crazily absorbing energy, her attack was not very effective. Chen Hao clearly could have pierced his heart, so why did he avoid it and let her go? Rumble, the two strongest attacks finally collided. Dazzling and terrifying flames filled the entire stage, and the ground shook. The temperature of the entire martial arts practice field suddenly rose by several times, causing the air to churn terrifyingly. Gusts of wind suddenly rose in a radius of 10 miles. Chu Liqin's eyes widened. The moment the vermilion bird seal exploded, all the energy in her body had been sucked dry. At the same time, because she had also received the backlash of the vermilion bird seal, she fell onto the stage with a bang. Chen Hao, who had received Chu Liqin's attack, also tumbled down from the sky. The phoenix seal, or more accurately, the phoenix seal, had also sucked out all of his energy and fell onto the ground. Ga. After a loud and clear cry, a figure that seemed to have exhausted all of its energy disappeared into Chen Hao's body. The battle ended. You're very strong. Unfortunately, you underestimated your opponent too much. When the flames disappeared, the two figures appeared on the stage. They were in a sorry state, and they struggled to stand up. Chen Hao stared at Chu Liqin, who was clutching her chest as she struggled to stand up. However, at this moment, Chu Liqin's expression changed drastically, and her heart was filled with shock. It was not because Chen Hao had spared her life, nor was it because she had lost the battle, but she could no longer sense the aura of the vermilion bird divine beast's inheritance. She wanted to question Chen Hao, but she forcibly suppressed the urge to speak. Yes, she could not speak. If Chen Hao gave her a definite answer, what would the result be? Everyone would know that she had lost the vermilion bird divine beast's inheritance. With her current ranking and cultivation level of the martial sage realm, she could choose any of the sects present. But what about after entering a sect? The treatment would probably be two different concepts. Moreover, she could not be sure if the vermilion bird divine beast's inheritance was really gone. It could also be that the injury was hidden in the depths of her mind, right? Chu Liqin quickly forced herself to calm down and stared at Chen Hao without batting an eyelid. This match is a draw. Sensing the aura of the two, the referee immediately announced. A draw, it's actually a draw again. It seems that the power of the divine beast's inheritance is about the same, and no one can do anything to the other. In fact, Chen Hao's inheritance is much weaker. What's strong is his combat strength, which makes up for the weakness. If he did not use his strange movement technique and risk the phoenix seal's backlash to stab with his sword, I'm afraid it would not be a draw. Indeed. The phoenix inheritance is originally of little value. For Chen Hao to use it to such an extent, I'm afraid only a super abnormal talent like his would be able to do so, right? When Chen Hao and Chu Liqin returned to their seats, countless people's eyes focused on Chen Hao as they discussed. No one knew that Chen Hao was actually not injured at all. His current appearance was completely faked. In this battle, he did not even reveal his aura as a saint because the color of his elemental energy did not change. Moreover, Chen Hao's powerful soul power had even fooled the elders on the rostrum. Chen Hao did not kill Chu Liqin on purpose. He thought of all kinds of possibilities and finally chose this. Perhaps this was the only way to quietly capture all the inheritances of the 5 divine beasts without scaring anyone. Moreover, Chen Hao was sure that if Chu Liqin was not stupid, she would not reveal that the vermilion bird's inheritance had disappeared. The only regret was that although Chen Hao had the highest chance of collecting all the inheritances of the divine beasts, he might lose to Leng Yihan in the 100 Empire rankings. But there was no other way. Chen Hao could only do this. Although he did not know what Leng Yihan's conditions were, the two of them had agreed not to force each other. Therefore, Chen Hao did not care much. The last battle of the day, the 10th battle, Leng Yihan vs Qiyu. Please enter the arena. While the crowd was still discussing, the referee's voice rang out again. You Qiyu, the inheritor of the divine beast White Tiger. Among the 5 divine beasts, if the black tortoise's defense was the strongest, then the white tiger's attack was the strongest. Not in terms of strength, but attack. The white tiger was a metal-type divine beast. Its strength was not as vast as the Qilins, but its attack was the sharpest and most invincible. The enchanting and seductive Yuqiyu flew into the arena with a serious expression. Among the 5 people, whether it was Yuqiyu or the others, the one they did not want to meet the most was Leng Yihan. Leng Yihan, who had comprehended the true essence of space and was extremely powerful, could be fatal when he attacked. Even if he was only a 9th-grade martial grandmaster, no one knew if his martial sage realm and inheritance could withstand Leng Yihan's attack. Even Chen Hao could not be sure before they fought. The only person who was not worried was the Black Tortoise inheritor, Li Yuran. He did not know if the others could do it, but he had absolute confidence in the defense of the Black Tortoise shell. When the referee announced the start of the match, Yuqiyu did not hesitate to bring up layers of protective aura. It was the 7-colored protective aura that symbolized the martial saint realm. However, there was a slight difference. Her 7-colored aura was filled with majestic golden energy. It was obvious that the metallic energy had taken the dominant position. The white tiger phantom also merged with Yuqiyu's body at the fastest speed. The sharp and unparalleled aura was like an invincible sword light. It carried a cold aura and pierced into the hearts of the crowd. The crowd that was still discussing suddenly quieted down. They all held their breaths and stared at the arena with wide eyes. However, what surprised everyone was that Leng Yihan's figure, which was as straight as a sword, did not release any aura. Only his sharp and soul-stirring eyes were staring at the enchanting Yuqiyu. He said lightly, "Make your move. Let me see how powerful the white tiger's attack is. Last 3 days, I beg for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you." Chapter 193. For 2 whole minutes, Leng Yihan did not use his mysterious space attribute True Essence. Instead, he relied on his own powerful combat power to fight Yuqiyu head-on. What surprised Chen Hao and the others was that Leng Yihan's attacks were so fierce that he seemed more like the inheritor of the White Tiger inheritance than Yuqiyu. He actually suppressed Yuqiyu. Yuqiyu had no choice but to admit defeat without even using her White Tiger seal. She knew that even if she used the White Tiger seal, she wouldn't be able to stop Leng Yihan, who had comprehended the space attribute. Thinking of Leng Yihan's stunning sword, Yuqiyu didn't need to joke around with her life. After the day's battles, everyone had a clear idea of who was stronger and who was weaker. Leng Yihan, who could force Yuqiyu to admit defeat, had undoubtedly stood out from the other 6. He was the most likely contestant to win the championship without much suspense. There were only 2 matches left that everyone looked forward to the most. One of the matches was originally between Yuqiyu of the White Tiger inheritance and Li Yuran of the Black Tortoise inheritance, but now it was between Leng Yihan and Li Yuran, whose attacks were more aggressive. The second match was between Leng Yihan and Chen Hao. Although Chen Hao had the Phoenix inheritance, Chen Hao was stronger in his own unique skills, realm, and battle strength. Moreover, he had comprehended the wind attribute. Perhaps only the battle between Chen Hao and Leng Yihan would be the most exciting battle. Without a divine beast seal that surpassed their own realm, the 2 were destined to display their true battle strength. The next day, after Tan Tai Lian and the other 3 teams finished their 6 matches, the 7th match was between Leng Yihan and Ao Huaguang. The battle went as expected. Leng Yihan used his terrifying battle strength to defeat Ao Huaguang, who had used the Qilin seal. What made Ao Huaguang grateful, what made the audience confused, and what made the elders on the rostrum nod their heads slightly was that Leng Yihan, who had the ability to kill Ao Huaguang, actually broke Ao Huaguang's Qilin seal and only placed his sword on Ao Huaguang's neck, who had lost his energy. At that moment, everyone knew that if Leng Yihan wanted to kill Ao Huaguang wouldn't have the time to admit defeat. The 8th match was between Chu Liqin and Li Yuran. To everyone's surprise, Chu Liqin actually admitted defeat. His complexion didn't look good, as if he hadn't recovered from his battle with Chen Hao the day before. When they thought about Li Yuran's abnormal defensive capabilities, they did not find it too strange. The ninth match was between Qinhao and Qiyu. This time, as everyone expected, Qiyu and Qinhao both used their divine beast seals and finished the battle. It was a draw, and both of them were seriously injured. The third day was a little strange. The first match was between Chu Liqin and Qiyu. After the referee called out their names, what no one expected was that both of them actually said, "I admit defeat," in unison. Both the referee and the audience were confused. The two of them looked at each other in surprise. Their eyes contained a trace of surprise, which gradually turned into deep frowns. A draw? A moment later, the two of them spoke at the same time. They actually shook hands and made peace in such a miraculous way. Everyone was puzzled. Could it be that they had already fought to this point and no longer had the heart to compete? The second match of the top 6 was between Qinhao and Ao Huaguang of the Qilin inheritance. The final result was the same as Qinhao's previous 2 matches, a draw, and a serious injury. Ao Huaguang, who was as majestic as an iron tower, was extremely embarrassed and confused as he was taken off the stage. The third match finally ushered in the most anticipated match, Leng Yihan vs. Li Yuran. Originally, everyone thought that Leng Yihan would most likely draw this match, but to everyone's surprise, Leng Yihan actually ended the battle in half a minute, leaving everyone dumbfounded. The incomparably hard turtle shell defense was like nothing under Leng Yihan's sharp sword. It was directly penetrated. Li Yuran, who was extremely confident, broke out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, Leng Yihan only seriously injured him and did not take his life. Perhaps it was deliberately arranged by the arbitration team to make the most anticipated battle between Qinhao and Leng Yihan the last day. Therefore, on the 4th day, Qinhao met the last divine beast inheritor, Li Yuran. No one noticed that Chu Liqin, Qiyu, and Ao Huaguang were exchanging glances from time to time. Occasionally, they would look at the calm Qinhao, but the three of them revealed extreme fear in their eyes. Others might not understand, but the three of them had encountered the same thing. Moreover, with Chu Liqin and Qiyu's performance yesterday, the three of them were enlightened. That was, all the divine beast inheritors who fought Qinhao had their divine beast inheritors destroyed. The three of them were well aware, but no one said it out loud. Of course, if they knew that Qinhao did not only destroy their divine beast inheritors, but also obtained their divine beast inheritors, they would be even more terrified. Unfortunately, it was impossible for Qinhao to expose himself. In the first 2 matches, Chu Liqin directly admitted defeat against Leng Yihan. Ao Huaguang and Qiyu shook hands again and chose to draw. Qinhao and Li Yuran appeared at the same time. Leng Yihan could break Li Yuran's attack. It could only be said that Leng Yihan was too abnormal. Li Yuran did not think that Qinhao could break his defense. So far, except for Leng Yihan, the others were all tied. Moreover, in everyone's opinion, this match should also be a draw. But unexpectedly, when Qinhao's sea of fire engulfed the divine beast tortoise shell, Qinhao's figure flashed across like a stream of light. A sword, like Leng Yihan's sword, easily pierced through Li Yuran's tortoise shell. When Li Yuran's essence blood spurted out, the raging fire burned even more fiercely, and the phoenix seal was fully released. Li Yuran was like a dead pig. Qinhao carried him by the neck and escaped the sea of fire. At least his life was saved. At this time, everyone was shocked to find that Qinhao, who had also used the phoenix seal this time, was actually not exhausted. His figure was as straight as a sword, and on his peerlessly handsome face, there was a faint smile. Qinhao won. Except for Chu Liqin and the other 2, and Leng Yihan, no one thought that this would be the result, and that the battle would end so quickly. When Qinhao leaped down from the arena, the crowd in the entire martial arts practice field was incomparably shocked. With a hubbub, they started to discuss animatedly. It had to be said that although the battles in the past few days were exciting, there were no unexpected situations. Everything seemed to be within everyone's expectations. On the other hand, Qinhao's unexpected performance finally caused a ripple. Could it be that Qinhao had been hiding his strength? Not likely. Who didn't want to be ranked higher? who didn't want to be the champion? For experts like Chen Hao, entering a sect was already at the point where they could choose freely. The higher the ranking, the greater the reward of the 100 Empire ranking. Moreover, the 100 Empire ranking was very famous even in the cultivation world. Especially the champion of the 100 Empire ranking. It not only symbolized glory, but also the importance of entering a sect. Moreover, whichever sect the champion chose was also a matter of pride for that sect. How could it not be important? Therefore, Chen Hao shouldn't have been hiding his strength on purpose. Instead, he had grown rapidly during the battle. Especially that sharp and terrifying sword, which was exactly the same as Leng Yihan's. Because of this, the battle between Leng Yihan and Chen Hao, which had been relatively clear, became even more confusing. According to the points, Leng Yihan was already in first place. Even if Chen Hao could defeat Leng Yihan, he wouldn't be able to shake his position. However, if Chen Hao could win, Leng Yihan's title as champion would undoubtedly be much lighter. It would even be overshadowed by Chen Hao's second-place glory. Therefore, whether it was for Chen Hao or Leng Yihan, the championship was no longer important. What was important was who would win the battle between the two of them. This most important battle was not held as scheduled. Instead, it was scheduled for the last battle of the 100 Empire ranking competition by the judges. 3 days later. Tan Tai Lian and the other contestants' round-robin matches were finally completed. Tan Tai Lian, who was an 8th grade grandmaster and had the inheritance of the Phoenix, won 11 matches without much suspense. She was only second to the top 6, Mang Yi, and Gao Jianfei, and ranked 9th. The sun was shining brightly in the clear sky. Under everyone's anticipation, Leng Yihan and Chen Hao's names finally came out from the judge's mouth. Chen Hao and Leng Yihan looked at each other and flew into the air at the same time. Chen Hao turned into a gust of wind and landed silently on the arena. Leng Yihan, on the other hand, flashed and appeared before Chen Hao. Both of them wore white robes and were equally handsome, but Chen Hao was more masculine. Leng Yihan's thin lips curled up slightly, but he looked extremely feminine. Coupled with his terrifying eyes that were as sharp as swords, he gave off a chilling aura. When the judge announced the start of the match, neither of them moved. Neither of them even increased their fighting spirit and energy. How about another bet? Chen Hao suddenly said. Leng Yihan frowned slightly and said, "You already owe me twice. Let's bet twice this time. If we lose, I'll owe you 4 times. If we win, we'll call it even." Chen Hao said with a smile. "Don't worry about having too many debts. You can say that. Why are you scared?" Hearing Chen Hao's words, Leng Yihan's slender eyebrows twitched slightly. He glanced at Chen Hao and said, "I'll satisfy you." Hiss. As soon as Leng Yihan finished speaking, he turned into a stream of light and disappeared from everyone's sight. Boom. At the same time, Chen Hao's body exploded with a roar. A bright rainbow light suddenly shone, and a majestic and terrifying aura suddenly spread out in all directions. At this moment, Chen Hao's expression became extremely serious. His mind was completely released, sensing Leng Yihan's aura. Leng Yihan. When Chen Hao first met Leng Yihan, he didn't have any chance of winning. But now, Chen Hao, whose realm and strength had increased countless times, still didn't have any confidence. This battle was definitely the most difficult battle Chen Hao had ever encountered. The speed of the space attributes true essence, as well as the aura of merging with all things in the world that was higher than his own realm. This made Chen Hao's fighting spirit soar wildly. He didn't dare to be careless. Second update. Monthly votes, recommendation votes. There's a third update tonight. These 2 updates are very, very slow. After the 100 Empire rankings, the real exciting cultivation world will begin. Chapter 194. However, Chen Hao did not intend to use the power of the divine beast's inheritance. First, he had not mastered them yet. Second, he was able to absorb all 5 mythological beasts into his body. It was more or less thanks to Leng Yihan. Using them against Leng Yihan now was unreasonable. Third, he could not expose himself. Otherwise, it would be too shocking. It was already very shocking to be able to destroy the other party's divine beast's inheritance, let alone forcefully take it. Whoosh, a cool breeze blew. Chen Hao, who was surrounded by a dazzling seven-colored light, slowly opened his palms. A golden sword appeared in Chen Hao's right hand in front of him. He lowered his center of gravity and took a step forward. A gentle wind blew. His aura, at this moment, was clearly in a state of battle, but it gave people a feeling of extreme calmness, lightness, elegance, and otherworldly. The gentle wind blew his bangs, and the majestic protective upstanding qi became soft and agile like a docile lamb. Even Chen Hao's originally fierce gaze seemed to have entered into a profound state at this moment, and it was devoid of sorrow or joy. It was even to the extent that it didn't reveal the slightest trace of battle intent. Leng Yihan also disappeared without a trace. Such a strange atmosphere made everyone in the martial arts practice field hold their breaths. Everyone knew that these two super geniuses who stood out in the 100 Empire ranking had entered the calm before the storm. It was fine if they did not make a move, but when they did, it would be earth-shattering. Martial Saint, he's actually a martial saint. How is this possible? Did he become a martial saint yesterday? In the silent martial arts practice field, countless people were shocked when they saw the seven-colored light on Chen Hao's body. Although they did not dare to break the silence, they were extremely shocked. 1 minute, 2 minutes, after a full 3 minutes, the martial arts practice field was still silent. At this moment, some ordinary cultivators felt that they were about to suffocate. However, the two of them still did not make a move. On the combat arena, only Chen Hao's figure that was composed and at ease still maintained his agile posture, and the breeze still blew by him. As for Leng Yihan, who seemed to have disappeared, there was no aura at all. Everyone knew that the two of them had entered a stalemate before they even made a move. The seemingly passive Chen Hao seemed to be unable to find any flaws in Leng Yihan's attacks. Could it be that even Leng Yihan, who was extremely fast and fierce, was unable to break through the silent Chen Hao? Hiss! At the 4th minute, a sword light that was 1,000 feet away from Chen Hao seemed to have caught the gap in the wind. It suddenly flashed with a sharp sword light, as if it had torn the void, and attacked Chen Hao at a terrifying speed. In an instant, it had reached Chen Hao's back. No one could describe how fast this sword was. At least, none of the cultivators below the martial god realm were confident that they could be so fast. No one thought that their attacks could be so fierce. Terrified screams erupted from the throats of countless people the moment Leng Yihan's sharp sword light appeared. However, before the screams could be heard, the sword light that was 1,000 feet away was only 10 feet away from Chen Hao's back. Bang! Ding! Boom! The moment Leng Yihan's sword light pierced through Chen Hao's protective qi, Chen Hao, whose hair stood on end, moved as fast as lightning. He turned around, swung his sword, and returned to his original position. It was all done in an instant. Ah! At this moment, the screams of the crowd finally rang out. However, Chen Hao and Leng Yihan's first probing exchange had already ended. In the eyes of the crowd, Chen Hao didn't seem to have moved at all. Only the exploding sword light and the terrifying explosion of energy made the crowd understand that Leng Yihan had already launched an earth-shattering attack. And Chen Hao was the first person to block Leng Yihan's attack. Amazing! Using in action. Chen Hao, you're the first person to block my sneak attack. However, this alone isn't enough. Be careful. Leng Yihan's voice could only be heard but not seen. Leng Yihan's voice seemed to come from all directions. The position of each word was different. Moreover, Chen Hao really couldn't sense any of Leng Yihan's aura. Although Chen Hao blocked Leng Yihan's first attack, he was still extremely shocked. His mind was in the perfect state of Tai Chi and virtuous as water. Without a doubt, his reaction was the sharpest at this moment. He was as still as a virgin and as agile as a rabbit. However, even so, Leng Yihan's sword light still broke through his protective chi before he could block it in time. If he had been a little faster, he would have been stabbed. Moreover, from the aura of Leng Yihan's sword light, Chen Hao could clearly tell that Leng Yihan had reached the state of controlling the sword light from a distance. This state was not something that Chen Hao could compare to. Hearing Leng Yihan's words, Chen Hao frowned slightly. What if he's a little faster? Although I can react the fastest by remaining still, I'm still in a passive position. His speed is already unbelievably fast, and I have to reach him first. No. Whoosh, Chen Hao instantly changed his strategy. Suddenly, a gust of wind rose around him, and Chen Hao's figure disappeared from the arena. The breeze within 100 feet turned into a gust of wind that swept through the entire arena. Sensing Chen Hao's disappearance, Leng Yihan, who was hidden in the void, revealed a smug smile. I'm not afraid of you moving, I'm afraid of you remaining still. Silence, especially Chen Hao's posture, made it difficult for Leng Yihan to find an opening. What did it mean to be in a stalemate for 5 minutes? It meant that Leng Yihan had a headache. Because he was traveling through space at this time, it consumed a lot of energy. Therefore, Leng Yihan had no choice but to attack. In the eyes of the audience, this was the first time they had fought, but could it be that the sword light had integrated all of Leng Yihan's knowledge? The true essence of the space attribute and the energy of merging with everything in the world was displayed to the extreme? The only thing lacking was that the attack was a little weak. In addition to his own words, Chen Hao could not hold it in anymore. Of course, Leng Yihan was pleased. Although he had used a little trick, didn't Chen Hao still hide the fact that he had entered the martial saint realm? Otherwise, he would have been prepared. There was no need to use a trick now. If he moved, there would be an opening. If there was an opening, he could break through. The weak defeated the strong. Yes, the weak defeated the strong. Leng Yihan was only a 9th grade martial grandmaster. Moreover, he could sense that Chen Hao's energy was far more powerful than other martial saints. It was terrifyingly powerful. Leng Yihan was sure that even a 4th grade martial saint's energy would not be as powerful as Chen Hao's. Leng Yihan's innately powerful perception immediately spread out. In an instant, he caught sight of Chen Hao's aura in the colorless and formless wind. How could the true essence of the wind attribute be hidden from him? Merging with everything in the world was even more impossible. This was because Leng Yihan's realm of merging with everything in the world was much higher than Chen Hao's. Chen Hao was naturally aware of Leng Yihan's abnormal perception. He had already known this when he was searching for spiritual herbs in the Endless Sea. At that time, he had also merged with the wind, but Leng Yihan had still directly locked onto him. However, Chen Hao still did it. There was no other way. Moving was always more active than waiting passively. At least, after seeing Leng Yihan's terrifying speed, Chen Hao felt that he had to do it. Hiss hiss hiss. Suddenly, a strange fluctuation appeared in the space amidst the wild wind. Strands of twisting, snake-like strands surged towards Chen Hao from all directions without any particular order. Radiant Sword Technique, 100 Sword Slash. Hiss hiss hiss. At the same time, Leng Yihan's cold voice suddenly rang out. As the word slash left his mouth, the twisting space turned into streaks of cold and sharp sword light. Containing extremely condensed energy, there were at least 100 streaks that shot toward Chen Hao at a terrifying speed. Faintly, they formed a crisscrossing sword net that seemed to divide the entire space into pieces. Each piece was only 2 feet in size. Who could dodge it? Other than rats that could dig holes, no one could dodge such a dense and sharp attack. What pure and condensed energy! The elders on the rostrum exclaimed when they saw Leng Yihan's attack. It had to be known that the more powerful the energy, the more intense the ripples would be. However, Leng Yihan's sword net was like a cold sword light. It did not cause any ripples in space, nor did it spread any energy in all directions. It was like a 3-dimensional net made of thin lines. Any person or object would only explode the moment they touched it. And the crisscrossing energy was undoubtedly 100 swords combined into one. This kind of attack had the attribute of an all-around attack. However, if there was only one person within its range, it would become a single-target attack. From this, one could see how powerful he was. It seemed that Qin Hao had no other choice but to take it head-on. After Leng Yihan made this attack, his figure finally appeared in the void. At the same time, the aura around him soared crazily, shining with incomparable light. What surprised everyone was that a wave of extremely cold energy instantly spread out. The tyrannical pressure made everyone tremble in fear. It was obvious that Leng Yihan did not expect the 100 sword cuts to defeat Qin Hao. That was just an appetizer before his real attack. When the 100 sword cuts collided with Qin Hao, it was time for him to make a shocking attack. It took a long time to describe, but in reality, it all happened in an instant. But, shrink! When Leng Yihan gathered the terrifying cold energy, Qin Hao also exploded with a clear shout. He, who had merged into the wind, had indeed appeared under Leng Yihan's all-around blockade. After all, merging into the wind did not mean that his body could really turn into air. If he did not appear, he would only be cut into pieces. Therefore, Qin Hao appeared. But, following his shout, what made everyone dumbfounded was that the moment the dense sword net pierced through his body, Qin Hao's body trembled and twisted at a terrifying speed. Accompanied by extremely strange cracking sounds, Qin Hao's body strangely shrunk into a ball. With a swoosh sound, he turned into a stream of light and shuttled through the dense sword net. He did not touch any of the sword lights. The moment he passed through, his entire body suddenly stretched and stretched. Incomparably violent energy instantly gathered in his body. Third update. Monthly votes, recommendation votes. Thank you. Chapter 195. There's more than a day left. Begging for monthly votes. Recommendation votes. There will be 4 chapters today. Please, everyone. What kind of secret technique is this? In the martial arts practice field, countless eyes stared at Qin Hao's figure in shock. Even Leng Yihan and the elders on the platform were no exception. That contraction and expansion was simply too inconceivable. How much had he shrunk? No one dared to imagine. Martial artists, even if they were at the saint level, were only at the innate realm. They were far from the realm of transformation. But just now, Qin Hao had shrunk his body by several times. His head seemed to have shrunk into his chest, and his limbs were folded and shrunk into a small ball. Without giving the audience much time to be shocked, Qin Hao's energy reached its peak. He took a step forward, and with a whoosh, he attacked Leng Yihan with his sword. At this moment, Leng Yihan, who had also raised his yin energy to its peak, had reached the point where he had no choice but to release it. Ding 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 ding. Boom 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 boom. In an instant, the two figures intertwined, shuttling back and forth in the space of the martial arts practice field. Their movements and attacks were so fast that the audience was dazzled and unable to take it all in. Every move of the dazzling and terrifying sword light contained the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. In just a few breaths of time, the entire arena was already in a state of devastation. Numerous fine but deep sword scars crisscrossed the arena, and even the incomparably powerful ceiling barrier had cracks appearing on its surface. It was easy to imagine how condensed their energy was. With a flick of Leng Yihan's wrist, there were several hours of sword strikes. Hundreds of sword strikes were so fast and fierce that it was beyond Qin Hao's imagination. But Qin Hao's attack also shocked Leng Yihan to the core. Qin Hao's speed was far inferior to his, and it was not even a third of his speed. However, his sword moves were skillful and skillful. There was no defense, only attack. Moreover, every move was aimed at his flaws and places that he had to save, and he occupied the initiative in every aspect. It made Leng Yihan feel that every attack he made was completely predicted by Qin Hao, and his speed advantage was completely nullified. The saying that speed was unbeatable in the same realm had been overturned by Qin Hao. Everyone stared at the arena, their expressions full of shock, especially those who had fought Qin Hao to a draw. They were even more terrified. Not to mention that their divine beast inheritances had been destroyed. Even if they still had them, they knew that it would not be difficult for either Qin Hao or Leng Yihan to kill them. To be exact, it would be a piece of cake. The sword glows and the pressure that seeped out from the arena allowed them to clearly understand that if it was them, they would not be able to block such an attack at all. This was simply a battle of energy realm. If this goes on, I will definitely lose. Under Qin Hao's fierce attacks, Leng Yihan thought to himself. He is fighting like he doesn't care about his life. He only attacks and doesn't defend. If I don't save myself, I will be killed by him. He is only seriously injured. If I avoid the battle, it will be a draw at most. Leng Yihan believed that with his space attribute True Essence, if he really chose to defend and wander around the martial arts practice field, Qin Hao would not be able to do anything to him. He did not need to constantly travel through space. The martial arts practice field, which was close to 1,000 feet wide, was enough for him to hide from Qin Hao. However, being chased by Qin Hao like a mouse was not Leng Yihan's style. It seems that I can only rely on external forces. Leng Yihan's eyes suddenly flashed with determination. He was arrogant and had never used external forces when facing opponents of the same level or even higher level. He had always relied on his own strength to fight. But now, because of Qin Hao's martial sage realm cultivation and powerful combat strength, Leng Yihan, who could not afford to lose, had no choice but to rely on external forces. Ding ding ding. Boom boom boom. Bam. Along with the dense and terrifying sword cries, Leng Yihan's body suddenly flashed with a pitch-black light. A terrifying aura instantly filled the air. The black light even covered the sky and the sun. In an instant, the entire arena was plunged into a temporary darkness. Boom boom boom. Boom. Boom boom. With an explosion, the bright sword light once again broke through the darkness. Qin Hao and Leng Yihan's bodies suddenly rolled back and separated. You lost. Qin Hao, who had spat out 3 arrows of blood, stabilized himself after rolling back a few hundred feet. He stared in Leng Yihan's direction and said. However, before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly stopped. He frowned and looked at Leng Yihan, who had stabilized himself before him. How is this possible? Qin Hao was shocked. The moment darkness fell, Qin Hao could clearly feel that Leng Yihan did not defend himself under his fierce attacks. Instead, he did not change his sword stance and stabbed him 3 times. Of course, Qin Hao would not change his sword stance to save himself. He had originally used the solitary sword technique, which did not have any moves. Furthermore, he had used a barbaric fighting style that could kill 1,000 enemies but hurt 800 of his own to restrain Leng Yihan's terrifying speed. How could he save himself? Leng Yihan's 3 sword strikes were not fatal. But his sword strike was fatal. However, Qin Hao did not intend to kill Leng Yihan, so he moved slightly away. He believed that Leng Yihan knew that he had been merciful. It was also because of this that Qin Hao said that he had lost after he stopped. But, what shocked Qin Hao was that at this moment, Leng Yihan was standing in the air. His white robe had disappeared, and he was wearing a set of soft armor that emitted a dark light. Mysterious golden runes covered the black soft armor, exuding an incomparably powerful aura. How could there be any injury to his heart? Qin Hao, you hid the fact that you had become a martial saint, so I used the black iron battle armor. Isn't that fair? Your fighting style obviously won't work for the next attack. My black iron battle armor not only has a powerful array, but it also has the ability to condense the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. In other words, my energy consumption will be next to nothing. Be careful. Hiss. Leng Yihan's lips curled up slightly with a smile as he spoke. The moment he spoke, his entire person disappeared. Perhaps it was because Leng Yihan still felt a little embarrassed in his heart, but his tone of voice became a little strange. When he smiled, a small dimple uncontrollably appeared on his handsome but feminine face. Others might not have noticed, but Qin Hao's attention was focused on Leng Yihan. When he disappeared, Leng Yihan's expression, appearance, and aura all appeared clearly in his mind. Those small dimples made the originally feminine face give Chen Hao a charming feeling. Coupled with the way Leng Yihan looked at Chen Hao, even Chen Hao, who was in the middle of battle, couldn't help but shudder. This guy can't be homosexual, right? Hiss. The bright and sharp sword light interrupted Chen Hao's goosebumps. With a loud shout, he waved his sword and retreated. Ding! Rumble! Leng Yihan, who was wearing the black iron battle armor, was like a shadow. His fierce attacks became much bolder and more powerful. This increased the pressure on Chen Hao by several times. Almost in an instant, the two were once again in a frenzied battle. However, unlike last time, Chen Hao could no longer suppress Leng Yihan like before. Instead, he was suppressed in every way. Puff! 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 In just a few breaths, blood splattered all over Chen Hao's body. Leng Yihan's sword moves were 3 times faster than his, and he didn't need to defend himself. He immediately displayed a terrifying combat strength. Chen Hao's expression became extremely serious. Chen Hao, admit defeat. If this continues, you won't be able to hold on for long. Leng Yihan, who had the absolute advantage, said as he looked at Chen Hao, who had numerous wounds on his body. He was very clear about Chen Hao's abnormal recovery ability. Therefore, he didn't hold back at all. Moreover, he still couldn't assassinate Chen Hao's vital points. I, Chen Hao, dare to fight, and I will never admit defeat. Hiss. What shocked Leng Yihan was that when Chen Hao's cold voice rang out, he actually merged with everything in the world right in front of him. Wasn't this courting death? It's fine if it's someone else, but I'm Leng Yihan. My realm of merging with everything in the world is much higher than yours. If you want to defeat me so desperately, I won't give it to you. Open for me. Hiss. Leng Yihan shouted, and the sword light suddenly pierced into the void. Puff. Ding. Boom. What shocked everyone was that Chen Hao and Leng Yihan were sent flying once again. What shocked Leng Yihan even more was that Chen Hao, who had merged with everything in the world, suddenly changed his form the moment his sword pierced through. His body twisted strangely, and he forcibly avoided a vital point attack. There was also a pure and terrifying energy that blocked his sword. At the same time, Chen Hao's golden sword pierced through his black iron battle armor. Unfortunately, Chen Hao failed to comprehend the profundities of the profound heavenly battle armor in that split second of time. This terrifying showdown caused everyone to be shaken to the core. And this was under the circumstance that they didn't understand the real battle. If they knew that the two of them had merged with everything in the world in such a short moment and were in such a dangerous situation, their eyeballs would probably fall to the ground from shock. This black iron battle armor, could it be condensed by the nameless old man? Chen Hao, who had been sent flying, was extremely shocked. His desperate attack had definitely taken a huge risk, and it had exposed his identity as a dual cultivator to Leng Yihan. This was because what blocked Leng Yihan's sword was pure mental energy. Mental energy that had no effect on the physical state of the body. But the moment the golden sword touched the black iron battle armor, Chen Hao found that the black iron battle armor's trajectory was completely unpredictable. How could he find it in an instant? No. With this black iron battle armor, he's practically invincible. It also has the ability to condense the spiritual energy of the world. If I continue to waste my energy, won't I be exhausted by him? Fuck, this guy must be gay. 2 conditions are already incredible. If he turns them into 4, won't I be disgusted to death? Absolutely not. I can't lose. At least I have to break even. End. Today, it will explode. Begging for monthly votes. Chapter 196. Second update. There are still 2 chapters left at night. There is still a little more time left in the last day. I sincerely ask those of you who still have monthly votes to vote for Dark Mountain. Thank you. He's actually stabilizing himself. Leng Yihan stared in shock at Qin Hao, whose expression was flickering. Spiritual power, pure spiritual power. In order to merge with all things in the world, one needed to restrain one's physical strength. Any strand of energy that was scattered in one's meridians, bones, muscles, and so on had to be retracted into one's dantian. Otherwise, one would not be able to merge. However, Qin Hao, who had merged with all things in the world, was still able to release energy to block his attack. What did this mean? Only the spiritual power that was detached from the physical body and attached to the mind alone could do it. Dual cultivation. No wonder his energy is so terrifying. Leng Yihan bit his thin lips. Two sharp sword intents flashed in his eyes. With a hiss, he disappeared before everyone's eyes. With the profound iron battle armor, I want to see what you can do to me if I launch a sneak attack. I must win. When the will is there, the chi is there. When the chi is there, 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 the chi is there. Under the immense pressure, Qin Hao's mind became clear as he immersed himself in the profoundness of the ultimate martial arts. To everyone's surprise, Qin Hao and Leng Yihan were once again facing each other. One stood motionless while the other hid in the void. At first, they were only surprised, but after a moment, looking at Qin Hao on the stage, everyone's eyes widened in shock. The entire martial arts practice field could no longer maintain its calm. What is Qin Hao doing? Countless people asked in surprise. No one understood what Qin Hao wanted to do. Even the elders on the rostrum were unable to understand. They all frowned and fell into deep thought. In the arena, Qin Hao stood in the middle, and the protective aura that covered his entire body actually slowly disappeared. Even his aura could no longer be sensed any trace of energy fluctuation. What was even more shocking was, he slowly closed his eyes. His appearance and expression seemed as if he'd been immersed in a state of sudden enlightenment. But this was a battle, a competition. Hiss. Leng Yihan, who was wearing the black iron battle armor, had his mind melded into the world after a short time. He was silent, colorless, and formless, like a poisonous snake hiding in the night. In a short minute, he suddenly appeared 3 meters behind Qin Hao. The dazzling and sharp sword aura was like a venomous snake spitting out its tongue. It was as fast as lightning as it pierced towards the back of Qin Hao's heart. It wouldn't endanger Qin Hao's life, but if it did, it would mean that Qin Hao had failed. Just like when Qin Hao attacked Leng Yihan, neither of them intended to take the other's life. As long as the winner was decided, that was enough. Who could dodge such a fierce attack at such a close distance? Before anyone could cry out in alarm, Qin Hao had already moved. His body trembled strangely. Suddenly, a wave of pure energy condensed in front of him. The moment the tip of Leng Yihan's sword was about to reach him, he actually blocked it. His body was like a willow in the wind, drifting away. At the same time, the sword aura in his hand buzzed and fiercely attacked Leng Yihan, who had appeared like a ghost. Ding! Boom! The two figures suddenly separated. Leng Yihan disappeared again, and Qin Hao's eyes were still closed, returning to his motionless state. Other than the experts in the martial god realm and above, no one saw the exchange between the two clearly. Only the terrifying sound of the explosion made everyone understand. In that split second, the two of them had completed a surprise attack, defense, counterattack, and block. After a short silence, the sword aura appeared again, but it was no different from the first time. The two seemed to be in a stalemate. No one could do anything to the other. This made Leng Yihan grit his teeth. He really couldn't understand how Qin Hao's reaction speed was so fast. If he had known, he would have activated the dark iron battle armor from the beginning and attacked with everything in the world. With the first sword, Qin Hao's reaction speed would have been enough to defeat him. But it was too late now. Qin Hao seemed to have comprehended something in the process of the battle. It made his reaction speed and perception much sharper. Qin Hao. After a full hour, Leng Yihan finally couldn't take it anymore. You can't do anything to me, and I can't do anything to you. Let's call it a draw. Okay. Chen Hao slowly opened his eyes, and the mysterious aura on his body instantly disappeared as he said straightforwardly. If this dragged on, it would be difficult to determine the winner. Chen Hao used very little energy in this state and recovered quickly. And Leng Yihan had the dark iron battle armor, so he didn't use much energy either. As the two's battle drew to a close, the 100 Empire ranking competition had officially ended. The huge black tower steel once again shone with a bright golden light and appeared in the center of the main arena. All the names of the 100 Empire ranking contestants shone with a bright light. From bottom to top, they were fixed one by one. Leng Yihan was first with the highest number of points. Chen Hao was second, and Tan Tai Lian was ninth. The top 20 contestants all received great rewards from the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce. Leng Yihan, who was first, received 1 million level 8 spirit pills. Chen Hao, who had become a pauper, received 800,000 pills. The third place received 600,000 pills. The 4th to 10th place received 500,000 pills each. The 10th to 20th place received 300,000 pills each. After the award ceremony, it was finally the most crucial moment for the 100 Empire ranking contestants, the selection of the sect. Whoosh! Whoosh! Following the words of Lu Wuxiang, the manager of the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce, more than 3,000 disciples of the 100 Empire ranking rose into the air and landed on the huge main arena according to their respective rankings and areas. The 50 sect elders on the rostrum also stepped on auspicious clouds and released their auras as they arrived on the main arena. The 3 elders of the 7th grade sect stood in the middle with smiles on their faces. They stared at Leng Yihan, Chen Hao, and the other top 20 contestants. Obviously, in their opinion, these top 20 contestants would be divided among them. The others were fine, especially Leng Yihan and Chen Hao. Even the 3 of them would have to compete. The Myriad Pill Pavilion elders, who were treated the best, were undoubtedly the most confident. Everyone, according to the rules of the 100 Empire ranking, the 50 sects will take turns to select disciples from the top to the bottom. 10 will be selected each time, and only one of the top 50 can be selected. As for the other 9, you can choose at will. If the chosen disciple has a sect that he likes, he can refuse. Okay, now the 7th grade sect, the Myriad Pill Pavilion, will choose first. After everyone was in place, Lu Wuxiang's majestic voice sounded. Ha! As soon as Lu Wuxiang finished speaking, the elder of the Myriad Pill Pavilion chuckled with a touch of arrogance on his face. He looked from Leng Yihan and Chen Hao to the entire martial arts practice field and said, I am Lu Xiang, the great elder of the Myriad Pill Pavilion's outer sect. I think everyone should know about our Myriad Pill Pavilion. Although we are a 7th grade sect, in reality, the treatment of our disciples is not worse than that of 8th grade or 9th grade sections. Our Myriad Pill Pavilion only wants 50 disciples this time. The ranking is not very important. What is important is talent. So, disciples who are confident can wait for me to choose. The top 20 are not bad, and there are a few in the top 100 who are not bad, haha. As the elder of the Myriad Pill Pavilion laughed, his eyes quickly scanned all the disciples. He gave a clear look to those he liked. Especially when he looked at Chen Hao and Leng Yihan, his eyes were burning. Such an obvious hint made the elders of the other sects look ugly, but there was nothing they could do. Anyone who went up would do the same. Choose one of the top 50. Leng Yihan and Chen Hao are not bad. Old man likes them very much. After the 2 of you enter our Myriad Pill Pavilion, Old Man can guarantee that you will be treated the same, and you will become the focus of the outer sect disciples. But this time, you can only choose one. Old Man will choose according to the ranking. Leng Yihan will be first. Leng Yihan, come over first. Elder Lu Xiang smiled and looked at Leng Yihan and the other 2. This was obviously an explanation for Chen Hao. The meaning was to let Chen Hao not think too much. He was as important as Leng Yihan. It was just that he could only choose one at a time. There was no other way. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Leng Yihan's face. Countless people were incomparably envious. A 7th grade sect, the Myriad Pill Pavilion, and to become the focus of the training. These conditions were definitely very tempting. Perhaps only the top 10 disciples could make Lu Xiang make such a promise. If the chosen disciple agreed, he would have to walk out of the camp and stand behind the sect elder. Leng Yihan smiled slightly and said, "Thank you, Elder Lu, for your kindness." After that, he turned his head and looked at Chen Hao meaningfully. His figure flashed, and he went behind Lu Xiang. Leng Yihan was obviously more than happy to join the Myriad Pill Pavilion. Although he did not care much about the sect's grade, it was necessary to receive good sect benefits after entering. The Myriad Pill Pavilion was rich and was naturally the best choice. As for the secret arts, he did not care. He had the Tao imparted to him by his master. Chen Hao shuddered and avoided Leng Yihan's gaze that invited him to join the Myriad Pill Pavilion. This made Leng Yihan frown slightly. Could it be that this guy had a problem with him after the draw? Or was he dissatisfied with him using the black iron armor? Then, Lu Xiang called out 3 names out of the top 50 and did not choose any more. The disciples who were called out were naturally flattered. One had to know that Lu Xiang had said that he would only choose 50 people this time. With their rankings, they were naturally excited to be chosen. They all stood behind Lu Xiang like Leng Yihan. Then, it was time to choose from the 7th grade sect, Celestial Peak sect. This elder, like Lu Xiang, first talked about how good Celestial Peak sect was, then clearly pointed out the disciples he liked. Then, he looked at Chen Hao with a burning gaze and said, "Chen Hao, your talent is very suitable for our Celestial Peak sect's secret arts. As long as you join our Celestial Peak sect, Old Man can guarantee that you will be treated as an inner disciple. Moreover, with the protection of our sect, I believe that no matter who wants to deal with you, you will be safe." Second update. Monthly vote. There are 2 more updates tonight. Please. Chapter 197. Whoosh. The elder's words made the eyes of all the disciples on the 100 Empire ranking shine. The countless spectators in the martial arts practice field exclaimed in surprise. What did it mean to become an inner disciple? Although the Celestial sect was not as rich as the Myriad Pill Pavilion, it was still a 7th grade sect. The treatment of its inner disciples was much better than the outer disciples of the Myriad Pill Pavilion. It should be known that the so-called inner disciples could only be promoted to inner disciples after breaking through the innate realm and reaching the Golden Core realm. Lu Xiang looked at the elder of the Celestial sect with an embarrassed expression. He did not expect the other party to offer such exaggerated conditions. Then, he looked at Chen Hao with a little worry. "Thank you for your kindness, Elder Zhu. I'm sorry, but I already have a sect I like." Chen Hao bowed and cupped his fists with an apologetic expression. Hearing Chen Hao's words, Lu Xiang smiled with relief. Leng Yihan also curled his lips slightly. Obviously, except for Tan Tai Lian and the others, everyone thought that Chen Hao had his eyes on the Myriad Pill Pavilion. According to the selection rules between sects and disciples, Chen Hao could not go in advance before the star-picking sect made their choice. This was also to protect the interests of many sections. What's more, during the star-seizing sect selection, Chen Hao was going to be in the top 50. The elder of the Celestial sect looked very embarrassed, but he did not say anything. He then chose Yu Qiyu of the White Tiger Inheritance. Yu Qiyu walked over. Then, the elder of the Celestial sect chose 4 disciples from the top 50. He did not choose again. Next was the 7th grade Nirvana Valley. After the 7th grade sect, there were 5 6th grade sects. They all offered very generous conditions to the contestants in the top 10. Tan Tai Lian was also approached by a few sects, but as expected, they were all rejected by her. This was within everyone's expectations. She shared the Phoenix inheritance with Chen Hao. There was no doubt that she would be in the same sect as Chen Hao. In everyone's opinion, this also meant that 3 of the top 10 were destined to be obtained by the Myriad Pill Pavilion. The 8 immortals crossed the sea, each showing his own ability. Although the previous 7th grade and 6th grade sects were the same as the Myriad Pill Pavilion and expressed their preference for disciples, except for Qin Hao and Tantai Yen, as long as the top 20 disciples were the first to be chosen, very few would disagree. There were still many people who would rather be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. Moreover, the grade of the sect was indeed not the most important thing. However, there were exceptions. Yang Fan, who was outside the top 50, was one of the most outstanding. Since he had comprehended the true essence of the wind attribute, he was very popular. He had been called upon many times, but without exception, he had rejected all of them, including those from rank 6 sections. When one reached the 5th rank, the situation was similar to that of the 6th rank. However, when it came to the 4th rank sects, it would be difficult to pick a disciple from the top 50. The chances of being rejected would also increase. As for the rank 4 sects, the first choice was basically all rejected. You can only choose 10 people after the top 50. But even so, there were still quite a number of people at the top of the rankings who refused. Finally, it was the rank 3 sect. The star-picking sect was the strongest among the rank 3 sects and was the first to appear. The outer sect's Grand Elder, Elder Wu, had already learned of Chen Hao and the others' choices from Dongfang Ting. Therefore, from the moment the old man began to make his choice, his old face was beaming with joy. Chen Hao, I choose you for the first one. We are only a rank 3 sect, but old man can guarantee that we will treat you like a treasure. To everyone's surprise, the elder of the 3rd rank sect looked directly at Chen Hao and said, You're not going to waste any more time on him. The elder of the 4th rank sect didn't waste any more time on Chen Hao. There was no substantive promise. He only said that he would treat him like a treasure. What did that mean? What was considered a treasure? It was too much of a bluff. In everyone's opinion, there was something wrong with the old man's head. However, what made everyone dumbfounded was that Chen Hao actually smiled and nodded. His figure flashed and he appeared behind Elder Wu. Lu Xiang of the Myriad Pill Pavilion was originally looking at the overconfident Elder Wu with a mocking gaze, but now he was completely stunned. Leng Yihan also frowned at Chen Hao. Clearly, he had not expected Chen Hao to make such a choice. Elder Wu's face was flushed, as if he had never felt so good before. After looking at Tantai Lian and nodding slightly, he ignored everyone's shock and chose Yang Fan first, then Ni Jianpain second, and Li Yifeng third. Tantai Lian could only be kept for the next round. There was no other way. Tantai Lian was ranked 8th and belonged to the top 50. Then, after a long time, another 6 were chosen, making a total of 10 people. Round after round continued, and the later it got, the faster it got. Before the sky turned dark, all the disciples on the 100 Empire ranking finally had their respective destinations. Chen Hao, don't forget my 2 conditions. When the 50 elders were about to leave with their chosen disciples, Leng Yihan stared at Chen Hao and transmitted his voice. I won't. What are the conditions? I haven't thought about it yet. Let's talk about it later. Let's settle down first. After a while, I'll go find Master. I'll look for you then. Up to you, Chen Hao said. Elder Wu, Dongfang Ting, and the low-level disciples of the Zhaixing sect who were participating in the Xinwu relic trial, along with Chen Hao and the other new disciples of the 100 Empire ranking, began to teleport through the enormous transmission formation of the Thousand Treasures Chamber of Commerce. In less than an hour, they entered the city closest to the Zhaixing sect. This city is called Star City. It's only 40,000 miles away from the star-picking sect. It's also one of the cities under the jurisdiction of the star-picking sect. After coming out of the teleportation array of the Myriad Treasure Chamber of Commerce's branch, Elder Wu, who was flying in the air, said to the new disciples. Gazing at the huge city below them and the endless mountain peaks in the distance, many of the disciples on the 100 Empire ranking had a trace of excitement in their eyes. After walking all the way from the dynasty to today, they were finally going to start their real life in the cultivation world. Even Chen Hao was a little excited. Senior brother Chen Hao, we'll be brothers in the same sect from now on. Please take care of me in the future. I'm Bai Shuang, a low-level disciple of the outer sect. While everyone was flying quickly toward the star-picking sect, some disciples greeted Chen Hao and the other new disciples. Of course, most of them greeted Chen Hao. He was the runner-up of the 100 Empire ranking and a super genius who had tied with the champion. Everyone could imagine what kind of status Chen Hao would have after entering the star-picking sect. Moreover, with Chen Hao's talent, his future achievements would be incomparable to theirs. Chen Hao was neither warm nor cold. He responded indifferently to the disciples who came over to curry favor. The only thing that made Chen Hao depressed and Tan Tai Lian blushed was that almost everyone who came over to greet them would cup their fists and nod to Tan Tai Lian. It was clear that they treated Chen Hao and Tan Tai Lian as Dao companions. After 2 hours, they had traveled 40,000 miles in a flash. The mountain peaks pierced through the sky, extremely tall. Compared to the Shao clan's back mountain, Tianlu Mountain, they were many times taller. They were as straight as swords and abnormally steep. Strange flowers and herbs covered the peaks, and many palaces stood among them. White clouds floated at the foot of the mountain. The sky was blue and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was extremely abundant. This is our star-picking sect. Every mountain is more than 10,000 feet tall. There are 3,600 mountains in a radius of hundreds of miles. There are 36 main mountains, and they are nearly 30,000 feet tall. This is also the origin of our star-picking sect's name. As everyone gradually approached, numerous waterfalls, icy jade-colored lakes, mountain streams, waterside pavilions, towering old trees, and strange flowers and plants appeared successively before their eyes, causing Chen Hao and the others to be extremely shocked in their hearts. Especially the vast, powerful, and profound aura that enveloped an area of almost 500 kilometers was far from something any sacred grounds in the mortal world could compare to. The world of cultivation is indeed the world of cultivation. How can the secular world compare to such a unique cultivation environment? The blessed paradises of the secular world are practically everywhere in this world, with blessed paradises everywhere. Yes, our star-picking sect is only a 3rd grade sect. What are those 6th grade and 7th grade sects like? Some of the disciples on the 100 Empire ranking whispered in shock. As they approached the first towering peak, several streaks of flowing light on auspicious clouds shuttled through like lightning. The leader was actually riding a strange bird that was several feet long. This strange bird's feathers were sparkling and translucent, like sharp knives lined up side by side. The top of its head was golden, and its claws were like hooks, emitting a metallic luster. Elder Wu, welcome back. I heard that this time the 100 Empire ranking got a super genius who tied with the champion. A young disciple was sitting on the strange bird. He rushed to the front of the crowd and scanned the new disciples on the 100 Empire ranking with lightning speed. He quickly locked onto Chen Hao, who was beside Dongfang Ting, and asked, "It's you, right?" "Yes, this is Chen Hao." Elder Wu smiled and said, "Has everything been arranged?" "Yes, it has been arranged." "These are their tokens," the young man said. At the same time, 58 tokens floated to Elder Wu. When Chen Hao and the others stepped into the Zhaixing sect to officially report, in the Xuanwu Imperial Palace, the Emperor of the Xuanwu Empire, Mu Qing, and the leaders of the kingdoms and forces that Chen Hao and the others belonged to, who had been waiting in the depths of the palace for more than 10 days, finally looked excitedly at the huge teleportation formation. Rays of mysterious light flashed out, and a figure appeared in front of everyone's eyes. "Greetings, Immortal Ho." The Emperor of the Xuanwu Empire, Mu Qing, and the others immediately bowed to the old man who appeared. "Congratulations, your Xuanwu Empire has done very well in the 100 Empire ranking this time." Hua! Hearing the words of the messenger from the cultivation world's Wanzhen Chamber of Commerce, everyone present was pleasantly surprised. "Immortal Ho, what's the situation? Did you enter a high-level sect?" Xian Songfeng, the emperor of the Xuanwu Empire, asked impatiently. Sigh. The old man sighed and shook his head. Everyone's excitement from hearing the old man say that the results were very good immediately changed. Your Xuanwu Empire has a super genius, Chen Hao. Unfortunately, what happened to Chen Hao? Zhao Xingqian, who had arrived early, asked in a panic. He was the runner-up of the 100 Empire ranking and tied with the champion. What? Hearing the old man's words, everyone's eyes widened in shock. They could not believe what they had heard. Third update. Requesting monthly votes. At the crucial moment, Wushan is going to drop the ball. The fourth update was promised, but it can't be fulfilled. I just received a call from my cousin and sister-in-law in my hometown. They said that they are sending their niece to school and have been in Lijiang for a few days. They just arrived in Kunming and are about to arrive at Wushan. I definitely won't be able to write later. My cousin is an alcoholic. He's over 40 years old and has to drink a glass of tempered white wine for breakfast. I probably won't be able to escape later. At this crucial moment, Wushan is also very helpless, but there's no other way. They came all the way to Kunming, so I have to accompany them. Chapter 198. We're about to be destroyed. We've persisted for 30 days. This is the last day. Can't we persist? Dark Mountain continues to write. Everyone, please persist and see if there are any monthly votes left. After today, they'll be useless. Vote for Dark Mountain. Thank you. It's a pity that he rejected a 7th-rank sect and chose the 3rd-rank sect, the Zhaixing sect. As for the other 4, Tan Tai Lian is ranked 9th. She received the Phoenix's inheritance with Chen Hao, which is also very good. It's a pity that Tan Tai Lian followed Chen Hao and chose the Zhaixing sect. Yang Fan is ranked 68th. Ni Jianpain and Li Yifeng are also ranked in the top 200. They all chose the Zhaixing sect. The old man continued to speak about everyone's situation in one breath, causing Xian Cangfeng, Mu Qing, Zhao Xingqian, and the important people of the Dashan Kingdom to be dumbfounded. The Phoenix's inheritance, shocking rankings, strange choices, every single one of them was like a huge hammer knocking on everyone's heads. However, you don't have to worry too much. The rank of a sect isn't very important. Since they chose the Zhaixing sect, they naturally have their reasons. A true genius will shine in any sect. This Chen Hao is a rare genius on the 100 Empire ranking. As long as nothing unexpected happens, he will definitely bring great glory to the Xuanwu Kingdom. Many thanks, Spiritual Master Ho, Xian Cangfeng and the others said respectfully. Within a day, the news of Chen Hao being the runner-up of the 100 Empire ranking, fighting to a draw with the champion, and receiving the Phoenix's inheritance was sent back to the Zhenyuan Kingdom by Zhao Xingqian at the fastest speed. The Dashan Kingdom that Tan Tai Lian belonged to was no exception. The Xuanwu Kingdom and the other 2 kingdoms were in a state of celebration and rewards. Especially the Shao family that Chen Hao belonged to. Not only did they receive the full support of the Zhenyuan Kingdom, they were also personally rewarded by the Emperor of the Xuanwu Kingdom, Xian Cangfeng. The Phoenix's inheritance, in the royal new show hall of the Zhenyuan Kingdom, a graceful figure stood in a separate courtyard and stared at the night sky as she murmured. The cold moonlight poured down on her body, causing her beautiful face to become as cold as the moon. However, at this moment, the girl bit her lips and frowned. Her delicate body trembled. Almost 10 months. Only 10 months. However, he had already become a martial sage and had obtained the Phoenix's inheritance together with that woman called Tan Tai Lian. What about himself? Helian Wuzi, who had madly cultivated for 10 months, could no longer remain calm after receiving Chen Hao's news. He didn't blame Chen Hao. He only blamed himself for being too slow. Even though she had become the head disciple of the royal new show hall, even though she was a rank 9 martial emperor, there was still nearly a year before the rookie rankings would begin. How much could she improve? Unknowingly, a faint sense of bewilderment appeared in her heart, and it began to become chaotic. She bit her lips until they bled, but she didn't feel it at all. After an unknown amount of time, Helian Wuzi's pair of eyes gradually became ice-cold and persistent. With a clang, she took out the moonlight sword and violently released one terrifying attack after another. Rumble. The terrifying sword light directly destroyed countless trees and pavilions in the small courtyard. After a terrifying chasm appeared on the ground, Helian Wuzi soared into the air and left the royal new show hall in the blink of an eye. So what if it was the Phoenix inheritance? That was opportunity, that was luck, that was the choice of the heavens. As long as it wasn't his, the world of cultivation. In next year's new talent competition, the 100 Empire ranking, she would definitely enter the world of cultivation. Furthermore, she would enter the world of cultivation with results that were not inferior to his. Phoenix inheritance. In the world of cultivation, celestial mists curled up. In a palace that resembled a paradise, a figure stood within the clouds. Her eyebrows were long and dark. Her gaze was clear and her figure was graceful. She was like a fairy from a painting. Especially those eyes. They were as clear as a lake. As her gaze moved, it sparkled and there were layers upon layers of ripples. Star-picking sect, he's not participating in the dragon transformation rankings. The young girl muttered. Even though she had been grounded after sneaking out of the sect and had not left the mountain even now, she had been paying attention to the news regarding the 100 Empire ranking and had her maids inquire about it. After receiving the news that Qin Hao had obtained second place on the 100 Empire ranking and had tied with the champion, she was naturally happy for Qin Hao. However, the Phoenix inheritance made her frown. Although she was naive, she understood the Phoenix inheritance. Although she did not know what her relationship with Qin Hao was, she still felt that Qin Hao had such an intimate relationship with another woman. Ultimately, she felt that someone had stolen something from her. Furthermore, Qin Hao had given up on the dragon transformation rankings and chosen the star-picking sect, which was only a third-grade sect. This made her feel even more wronged. Star-picking sect. Qin Hao and the other new disciples were divided into 10 groups and brought to the 10 mountain peaks where the outer sect disciples resided and cultivated. Qin Hao, Tantai Lian, Yang Fan, Ni Jian Pain, and Li Yifeng were naturally in one group. Furthermore, it was the main peak where the star-picking sect's outer sect disciples focused on nurturing. Qin Hao, you and Tantai Lian will be in the same courtyard. Is that okay? Elder Wu and Dongfang Ting asked after personally bringing Qin Hao and the other 4 to the main peak of the outer sect. No. Qin Hao and Tantai Lian said in unison. Although we both received the inheritance of the Phoenix at the same time, this inheritance is not what you think it is. It seems to have mutated. Little Lian and I are only friends. Qin Hao explained after frowning slightly. If he did not explain now, it seemed that the two of them would have to live together. How could Qin Hao accept this? Of course, Tantai Lian could not accept it either. Oh? There's such a thing. That means, the two of you, haven't. Very well, if that's the case, once the two of you start dual cultivation, your improvement will be even more shocking. No wonder you could execute the Phoenix's nirvana on your own. Elder Wu said with a hint of excitement. It was not uncommon for divine beasts to mutate after receiving inheritances. Furthermore, once a divine beast mutated, it meant that its abilities would become even more terrifying. Seeing the awkward expressions on Qin Hao and Tantai Lian's faces, Elder Wu did not continue speaking. He directly arranged individual courtyards for the 5 of them. The 5 of you can rest first. The 5 of you, especially Qin Hao and Tantai Lian, will definitely receive special rewards from the sect. Now, you will be treated as the focus of the outer sect disciples' training. Everything, including the sect's introduction and regulations, has been placed in your rooms. Familiarize yourselves with the Zhaixing sect. If you need anything, you can find me at my mountain peak. Dongfang Ting said to Qin Hao and the rest as she bid them farewell. The so-called courtyards were actually huge palaces. Each of them occupied one. After Chen Hao stepped into the palace, he saw his sect's items in the hall. There were 2 sets of white Taoist robes and a treasured sword that exuded an ancient aura. The Taoist robes were inlaid with thin golden threads. There was a seal on the chest that represented the Jiaxing sect's disciple insignia. Just by feeling, Chen Hao knew that the Taoist robes were not ordinary clothes. They were Taoist robes that contained countless runes and magical uses. The treasured sword was ordinary, but it was still an inferior grade spirit weapon. It should be something that every disciple in the sect had. Apart from the Taoist robes and the treasured sword, there were also a few books made of unknown materials. There were detailed introductions to the sect, basic techniques for the Jiaxing sect below the Khanate stage, and sect regulations. The Jiaxing Taoist robe is made of hundreds of types of spirit silk. It contains 36 types of runes. It dispels all poisons, dispels miasma, is impervious to fire and water, and is invulnerable to ordinary weapons. Chen Hao picked up the manual beside the Taoist robes and read softly, "The world of cultivation is indeed extraordinary." Just this Taoist robe alone is a priceless treasure in the secular world. Chen Hao took out the treasured sword and examined it. It was indeed an inferior grade spirit weapon that was of no use to him. However, it was a must-have weapon for Jiaxing sect disciples. He casually put it away in the Xianhuang bracelet. Chen Hao quickly looked through all the items and picked up a thick book. This was the first book that all disciples who had entered the world of cultivation had to read, the essentials of the Eastern continent. Flipping through the catalog, there were hundreds of pages and thousands of catalogs. This caused Chen Hao's mind to be greatly moved, and his eyes shone with an excited light. The boundless continent is vast and boundless. It was impossible for this book to cover all the details. It's a must-read for disciples who have just entered the world of cultivation. It's a compilation of generations of experts from the Jiaxing sect. It's a must-have in the world of cultivation. When Chen Hao read the opening paragraph, he knew that this was a basic lesson that disciples of the Jiaxing sect had to familiarize themselves with after entering the world of cultivation. It was also a guidebook for the world of cultivation. Among the tens of thousands of sects, there were righteous and evil. The righteous path was called the immortal path, while the evil path was called the demon path. Apart from the immortal path and the demon path, there were also the demon path. The introductions to these sects and factions were extremely detailed, including their ultimate techniques, powerful treasures, top experts, genius disciples, branch locations, and so on. There were also introductions to many powerful itinerant cultivators and demons. Apart from that, there was also information on the super dynasties of the entire Eastern continent's cultivation world, merchant guilds, perilous lands, legendary paradises, mysterious realms, precious mines, spirit herbs, and so on. There was nothing that was lacking. It took an entire day for Chen Hao to completely imprint the thick book of information into his mind. Phew! What an exciting world! Strange and variegated. So this is it. Chen Hao muttered to himself. As he spoke, he picked up the other secret manuals and walked to the cultivation room. In the cultivation room, there was a huge round mattress formed by a frost jade ice bed. It was surrounded by formations and runes, causing the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to be extremely dense. As a disciple of the star-picking sect, I naturally have to cultivate the star-picking sect's martial arts. Chen Hao's figure flashed and he sat cross-legged on the cold jade ice bed. Wisps of cool air immediately entered his body from the ice bed and cleared his mind. There were a total of 4 secret manuals. The ultimate technique, condensing essence technique, the ultimate technique, star shaking fist, the soaring cloud steps, and the flowing cloud sword technique. Star shaking fist. This should be the complete star shaking fist, right? Chen Hao said with a smile as he picked up the star shaking fist manual written in immortal characters. Obviously, the incomplete version of the star shaking fist in the Royal New Show Hall of the Jinyuan Kingdom must have come from Dongfang Ting and been sent back to the Jinyuan Kingdom. These were all Xiantian martial arts techniques that surpassed the level of the Jiaxing sect. Although they were only the basic martial arts of the Jiaxing sect, Chen Hao was still looking forward to learning them. After all, although his ultimate martial arts techniques were powerful, they still required the support of this world's energy techniques in order to unleash their full power. Before he entered the Golden Elixir stage, he needed these martial arts techniques very much. Soon, Chen Hao had grasped the star-shaking fist and began to study and cultivate it. First update. Please vote for me. Chapter 199. Dong dong dong, in the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Chen Hao, who was immersed in cultivation, suddenly heard a hurried knocking sound from the door of the palace. He hurriedly calmed his mind and walked out of the cultivation room that was not closed in the first place. Senior sister. Is the reward here? After seeing Dong Fangting, Chen Hao smiled and said. It's here. Elder Wu reported to the sect leader. The sect leader is very impressed with your talent. The reward was beyond senior sister's imagination. However, is there a condition? Chen Hao asked directly. Yes. The Jiaxing sect has close to 10,000 outer disciples. Among them, there are 7,000 low-level disciples, 2,000 mid-level disciples, and 1,000 high-level disciples. You should already know the details of the sect, right? Dong Fangting asked Chen Hao as she looked at him. Yes. I do. Chen Hao said. The so-called low-level outer disciples were at the martial ancestor realm, mid-level disciples were at the martial sage realm, and high-level disciples were at the martial god realm. After surpassing the god realm, one could become an inner disciple. Every year, among the low-level, mid-level, and high-level outer disciples, there are 10 who are qualified to enter the first, second, and third levels of the 7-star grotto heaven to cultivate for 3 months. These disciples are all elites of their respective realms. The competition for this spot is very intense. This time, the sect leader's reward for you is to enter the 7-star grotto heaven to cultivate. You can choose the first level directly. No one in the martial ancestor realm can defeat you. It shouldn't be a big problem. If you want to enter the second level, it will depend on you. It will open in 3 months. You have 3 months to make a decision. Chen Hao looked slightly excited. He had already understood the 7-star grotto heaven from the sect's detailed introduction. It was as Dong Fangting had said. Only the truly gifted geniuses among the outer court disciples were qualified to enter. Not only was the energy of heaven and earth extremely dense, but it also contained extremely powerful laws of heaven and earth. Although it was only for 3 months, any disciple who entered would definitely improve tremendously. Especially disciples with extremely high comprehension abilities, they might even be able to comprehend the laws of heaven and earth. From the first level to the third level, the difference in power was not small. Chen Hao was now a saint, so it was naturally better for him to enter the second level. However, Chen Hao didn't have the confidence to obtain a spot among the saint-level experts. Chen Hao was not so blind as to think that he could defeat a rank 9 martial saint. Fortunately, Chen Hao still had 3 months. Alright. We'll see when the time comes, Chen Hao said. Also, after the sect master found out about the conflict between you and Fan Fang, he told you not to go out on your own. Even if you want to go, you have to tell me in advance. The sect master will send an expert to protect you in secret. However, I suggest that you cultivate in the sect for the time being. After all, you need some time to settle down after the 100 Empire battle. Furthermore, if you wish to engage in a battle, you can head over to the dueling ring area anytime you wish. Don't worry, Chen Hao said with a smile. As for the arena area that Dong Fangting mentioned, he had already learned about it from the sect's information and had long since made plans for it. It's good that you know. This is part of the reward. I exchanged it for body tempering elixirs, mind refining elixirs and mind clearing elixirs. There are 100 of each elixir, which will be very useful for your current realm. As for the rest, I will give them to Tantai Lian and the rest. Of course, I will get the lion's share. Ha, Senior sister, you really took it seriously, Chenhao said with a smile, but his hands deftly took the 3 jade bottles from Dongfang Ting's hands. Body tempering elixir, mind refining elixir and mind clearing elixir were special elixirs that the innate realm needed. Any one of them was worth 1,000 level 8 elixirs. These 300 elixirs were equivalent to 300,000 level 8 elixirs. Although Chenhao didn't know how big the reward that Dongfang Ting had received was, it was not small at all. The runner-up of the 100 Empire battle, the Thousand Treasures Chamber of Commerce had only rewarded him with 800,000 level 8 elixirs. Dongfang Ting stared at Chenhao and said, now that you are a martial saint, you can directly enjoy the treatment of a middle outer disciple. The sect master has already promised. However, the time limit is 1 year. After 1 year, it will still depend on you. Whether you can continue to enjoy such benefits will depend on whether you can prove your ability. The competition will be very fierce. The ranking in the arena area is one of the main factors. Dongfang Ting continued. Don't worry, the things in my hands will never fly away. There will only be more and more. Chenhao said confidently. 1 year. It was very long. His goal was to enter the second level of the 7 Stars Hollow in 3 months. That meant that he would have to fight with a middle outer disciple. He would definitely have to face a level 9 martial saint. Although he was only a level 1 martial saint, he had the confidence to fight. The outer disciple arena area would undoubtedly be the first place for him to rise in the star-picking sect. Chenhao had started cultivating when he was almost 12 years old. He was now 16 years old. In a short 4 years, he had advanced to the martial saint level and possessed powerful combat strength. Even among the many genius disciples with a strong foundation in the cultivation world, he could be considered outstanding. Otherwise, when the sect was selecting disciples, they would not have given him such generous conditions. After entering the star-picking sect, Chenhao immediately became a middle outer disciple. Coupled with the title of the 100 Empire ranking runner-up and the champion, there was no doubt that all the disciples in the star-picking sect did not know about Chenhao. However, this was not enough. To Chenhao, this was far from enough. He, who had reached the peak of many fields, had a natural pride that ordinary people did not have. If he did not do something, he would not do it. If he did, he would do it to the best of his ability. His goal, to most people, was absolutely unprecedented, extremely grand and unimaginable. The obsession of the other him in the past to pursue immortality still existed. Now, he realized that if he reached the peak of cultivation, he might be able to achieve it. Become an immortal and live forever. He believed that as long as he continued to advance towards this goal, his life would be magnificent and exciting. Body tempering elixir, tempering the physical body. My physical body should be very strong, right? Let's test the effects first. After Dongfang Ting went to find Tan Tai Lian and the others, Chenhao asked her to tell them that he was going into seclusion. Then, he used the token to activate the palace's restriction and closed the door to the cultivation room. At this moment, Chenhao took out a body tempering elixir from a jade bottle and said, Take 3 elixirs at the same time for the best effect. Body tempering elixir, tempering the physical body; spirit refining elixir, tempering the mind; clear mind elixir, understanding one's nature and condensing one's will. At this moment, the voice of the treasure hunting sword spirit sounded. However, your physical body is indeed very strong. Take 2 body tempering elixirs, 1 spirit refining elixir, and 1 clear mind elixir each. Test the effects first. Put aside the star-picking sect's cultivation technique for now. You'd better deal with those 5 fellows of yours first. Damn it, they're so noisy. They're always bothering me. Do I need you to tell me that? Of course I'll deal with them first. 3 months is really a short time. I wonder how much I can improve. Chenhao said. As he spoke, he put 4 elixirs that exuded majestic medicinal power into his mouth according to the number of elixirs mentioned by the treasure-hunting sword spirit. As the 4 elixirs entered his body, Chenhao felt his mind and dantian tremble at the same time. His mind suddenly became exceptionally clear. A vigorous heat also began to spread throughout his body. A numbing sensation, as if countless little bugs were biting at Qin Hao's mind, appeared in his mind. It was not very painful, but it was very painful. Not only did his physical body feel this way, even his soul felt like it was being bitten by countless bugs. Moreover, his mind was becoming clearer and clearer, and he could not cut off this feeling at all. If possible, Qin Hao would rather endure the heart-wrenching pain than endure the pain of having his heart bitten by tens of thousands of bugs. Forcefully enduring the numbness in his scalp and the urge to bang his head against the wall, Qin Hao immersed himself in his cultivation. After a full 6 hours, the medicinal efficacy was finally completely refined. That painful feeling also disappeared, and in its place was an extremely comfortable feeling of bitterness and sweetness. Phew. It's actually so powerful. Just 4 elixirs are actually equivalent to a month of my cultivation. No wonder there are so many experts in the cultivation world. It seems that 3 months is enough, right? Qin Hao felt that in a short 6 hours, his dantian and meridians had actually expanded by a little. He was extremely shocked. Although he knew that there would be an effect, he did not expect it to be so great. It's not as good as you think. Any elixir will only have the greatest effect the first time it is used. After consuming it to a certain level and reaching the maximum effect of the elixir, consuming it again will no longer have any effect. It can only be treated as an ordinary elixir to refine one's energy. The treasure-hunting sword spirit said, challenging a 9th-grade martial saint in 3 months is still very difficult. Only when there's difficulty, there's a challenge. Alright, go do what you need to do. I'm going to start my closed-door cultivation. Qin Hao naturally knew about the effects of the elixirs, so he did not mind at all. Since he could obtain such a good effect the first time, even if the effect weakened in the future, it would still exceed Qin Hao's expectations. It was enough. Azure Dragon, let's start with you, hiss. Qin Hao's consciousness immediately sank into his mind. Majestic and resplendent green light began to shine from Qin Hao's body. At the same time, under Qin Hao's control, the Xianhuang ring and the 5 treasured swords flew out from between his eyebrows and surrounded Qin Hao. What he needed to do was not only to complete the fusion of the 5 divine beasts' legacies, but also to merge the 5 divine beasts into the 5 treasured swords and combine them with the Xianhuang ring. This was the thought that the mysterious existence conveyed to Qin Hao through the phoenix. A spiritual artifact would advance along with its owner's strength. Only such a spiritual artifact would have a higher degree of compatibility with its owner. After reaching a certain level, it would be able to produce an artifact spirit that truly belonged to itself. It would not be a weapon spirit that was left behind like the treasure-hunting sword spirit. Wow! Is this Tantile Yen? She's really powerful. Yes, she has won 10 matches in a row. I'm afraid that this month's champion title will be hers. That's not necessarily true. The top 10 low-level disciples haven't appeared yet. It's only the beginning of the month. But one thing is for sure, the end of the month will definitely be very exciting. I'm really looking forward to the scene of 2 great beauties competing on the same stage. That's true, but I actually prefer Tantile Yen. TSK, if I can have such a Tao companion, after becoming an inner sect disciple, I'll definitely advance at lightning speed. What are you dreaming about? Tantile Yen is the Tao companion of Qin Hao, the runner-up of the 100 Dynasties ranking. The Phoenix legacy is obviously. I know this. I don't want Tantile Yen. I'm talking about someone like her. But, that Qin Hao is really low-key. After entering the sect, he went into seclusion. It's been more than a month now, and he hasn't shown up. Could it be that his reputation is undeserved and he's afraid of challenges? If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 200. That goes without saying. Chen Hao has already reached the martial saint realm. If he were to participate in the arena challenge, he would have to do it in the intermediate arena. Although he has the Phoenix's inheritance and is said to be very powerful, he is only a rank 1 martial saint. He would not be able to do well in the intermediate arena. Such super geniuses are usually very conceited and would not allow themselves to be defeated. How could he do something he is not confident in? That's true. If it were me, I would not do it either. In the star-picking sect, on a towering mountain peak between the 10 peaks of the outer court disciples, many outer court disciples were gathered in the huge martial arts practice field on the peak, watching the 9 arenas in the center. The 9 arenas were divided into 6 low-level arenas, 2 middle-level arenas, and 1 high-level arenas. They were also the arenas where the outer court disciples of the 3 ranks interacted with one another. The so-called interacted with one another meant that one was not allowed to deliberately kill or harm one another. However, it did not mean that one could not fight to their heart's content. Because every arena was guarded by experts of the sect. Once an uncontrollable accident occurred, they would intervene. At this moment, most of the disciples, including the middle and high-level disciples, were gathered around a low-level arena, discussing it. It was because of Tan Tai Lien. She was ranked 9th on the 100 Dynasties ranking, had the Phoenix's inheritance, and was an 8th rank zone. With these 3 identities, any one of them would attract attention in the 3rd rank sect, the star-picking sect. Moreover, Tan Tai Lien's stunning appearance had undoubtedly created a great beauty effect. 10 days ago, Tan Tai Lien, Yang Fan, and the others had started to challenge the arenas to train themselves. However, only Tan Tai Lien could dominate the arenas. She had not tasted defeat for 10 consecutive days and had already obtained the qualifications to be the arena master of the low-level arena. On the ranking list of the low-level disciples at the edge of the arena, Tan Tai Lien had already risen to the top 100. This ranking was based on the ranking of the strongest opponent she had defeated. What Tan Tai Lien wanted to do was to enter the top 10 and shut everyone's mouth. This was because she had also obtained the sect master's reward to enter the first level of the 7 Stars Paradise. At this moment, there were less than 2 months before the opening. Although she would definitely be able to enter, according to Dong Fang Ting's intention, even if she obtained special permission, she would still occupy a spot. Therefore, it would be best if she could enter legitimately. Moreover, Tan Tai Lien also possessed this strength. 8th grade E-Zone, in addition to the powerful battle strength of the Phoenix inheritance, among the low-level disciples, there was still a high chance of entering the top 10. Even if he couldn't make it into the top 10, he would still be able to get some points if his ranking was close. Whoosh! Just as Tan Tai Lien was fighting with a low-level disciple, a stream of light streaked across the sky and appeared above the arena mountain. He immediately locked onto Tan Tai Lien, who was in the midst of a great battle. Immediately after, his powerful senses spread out and quickly found the auras of Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ni Jianpain. This figure was none other than Chen Hao. To Chen Hao's surprise, Yang Fan and the other 2 were all wounded. They were seated cross-legged in the outer area of the arena, cultivating themselves. "What's wrong with you 3? After quietly appearing in front of the 3, Chen Hao asked aloud. "Ah." Yang Fan and the others immediately opened their eyes in surprise. "You're out?" "Yes." Chen Hao looked at the injuries on the 3 of them and replied with doubt. "Ha! Following your wishes, the 3 of us are slightly weaker. Thus, we've been defeated repeatedly and have continued to challenge. After all, there are no restrictions in this arena. If you lose, you can't go up. Furthermore, there are 6 low-level arenas. We can take turns." Li Yifeng said. "Not bad. Your ranking has risen to within the top 3,000. 7,000 low-level disciples. That's considered above average." Hearing their words, Chen Hao looked at the low-level disciples ranking in the distance and said. He wasn't surprised to see that Tan Tai Lien had risen to the 97th rank. The highest cultivation level of a low-level disciple was a 9th rank martial ancestor. Furthermore, there weren't many of them. There shouldn't be many who could threaten Tantile Yen. Chen Hao, you're going to start too? Li Feng asked. Yang Fan and Ni Jianping also looked at Chen Hao with doubt. Of course. We naturally have to make use of such good cultivation conditions. Don't just fight blindly. Every time you fight, you have to comprehend something. Understood. The three of them said. Originally, they wanted to say something. However, when they thought of how abnormal Chen Hao was, they didn't say anything. So what if he was a first-rank martial saint? In the middle-level arenas, the three of them felt that although Chen Hao would definitely meet a strong opponent and lose, no one would be able to stop his rapid improvement. Xiaoyan's battle is over. Tell her to wait for me. I'll go play first. Chen Hao glanced at Tantile Yen, who had firmly gained the upper hand. He directly turned into a stream of light and flew to an intermediate ring in the distance where the winner had just been decided. Who else wants to fight? The victorious disciple exuded a strong aura as he faced the crowd below the arena and asked. Come down, Senior Chai Yi. If you're not a disciple in the top 100, no one can defeat you. You should wait until the end of the month to challenge again. This time, Senior Chai Yi will definitely enter the top 100. Below the arena, a disciple shouted at the young disciple on the arena. Ha, of course. Last month, I almost succeeded. This month, I'll definitely succeed. Is there really no one else? Chai Yi's face revealed a smug smile. There was a hint of loneliness of an expert. Although he knew that this was only the beginning of the month and no real experts had come. Being able to perform in front of so many fellow disciples was a rather mighty thing. Within the sect, how did one make a name for themselves? It was by relying on strength and the arena. I'll go. Just as Chai Yi was about to jump off the arena, a voice suddenly sounded. Chen Hao's figure was like a gust of wind as he floated onto the arena. HM. Chai Yi looked at the unfamiliar youth in front of him and slightly frowned. Who is this? Below the arena, many disciples also revealed astonished expressions. Those who dared to challenge Chai Yi were basically all middle-level disciples who were rank 7 or 8 martial saints. More or less, they should have some fame among the middle-level disciples. However, none of them had ever seen such a handsome young man before. Furthermore, looking at his age, he was clearly a few years younger. At most, he looked to be 17 or 18 years old. Junior brother, forgive me for being blind. How should I address you? My name is Chai Yi, rank 8 martial saint. I'm ranked 107th among the middle-level disciples. Chai Yi faintly thought of something but did not dare to be sure. He slightly cupped his fist and revealed a smile on his face as he asked. Senior Chai, it's normal that you don't recognize me. My name is Chen Hao, a new disciple. Chen Hao cupped his fist and said. Chen Hao. So it's you, haha. Chai Yi immediately laughed and said. Chen Hao. He's Chen Hao. Wow, awesome. Isn't he a rank 1 martial saint? He hasn't appeared for more than a month and he dares to challenge Senior Chai Yi. He's indeed very handsome. The crowd immediately burst into a buzz of discussion. Everyone looked at Chen Hao with burning gazes. The sudden commotion caused the disciples in the nearby arenas to hear it. Immediately, chaos. In an instant, countless disciples in the entire martial arts practice field swarmed toward the arena that Chen Hao was in. Although Chen Hao had not appeared for more than a month, it did not affect his fame in the star-picking sect. During this period of time, not to mention Tantile Yen, even without her, Chen Hao would have become the person that everyone wanted to meet. For a rank 3 sect like the star-picking sect to be able to recruit the second place of the 100 Empire ranking and draw with the champion, it was definitely a sensational matter. Quick, quick. Chen Hao is going on stage. After hearing the news, some of the disciples from the 100 Empire ranking in the low-level disciples area called out to familiar people and quickly ran over. As they were all from the 100 Empire ranking, they naturally felt a sense of closeness in the sects of the cultivation world. After all, the majority of the disciples in the sects were natives of the cultivation world. In the eyes of these natives, there was no doubt that they were inferior. Therefore, the more dazzling Chen Hao was, the more faith they felt for the disciples of the 100 Empire ranking. Who said that we, disciples from low-level empires, were inferior to you natives? Quick, go and inform senior brother Kai Jin that Chen Hao has appeared, go and inform senior brother Nalan that Chen Hao has appeared. Just as the crowd swarmed towards the arena where Chen Hao was located, a few figures flashed and disappeared. These figures were the disciples that were ordered to wait for Chen Hao's appearance. The people they were going to inform were those ranked close to the top 10. They had long since received news that the sect master's reward for Chen Hao was the first or second floor of the 7 stars paradise. Moreover, the exact news was that as long as Chen Hao could rank in the top 20 of the middle-level disciples, he would be able to obtain a spot to enter the second floor. This was something that concerned their own interests. How could they not care? Junior brother Chen Hao, it's not bad that I, Chai Yi, obtained your maiden battle. I know that your battle prowess is very strong. However, I heard that you're only a rank 1 martial saint. So, be careful. I, your senior brother, will not hold back on the arena. Of course, I will try my best to not injure you. Chai Yi said with a slight smile. There was not a trace of disdain or ridicule in his eyes. Thank you, senior brother. Chen Hao said with a slight smile. Yao Yao made a gesture of invitation. Just at this moment, the middle-aged expert in charge of supervising the arena also stood up. His expression revealed a trace of expectation and seriousness as he looked at Chen Hao, who was about to start the battle. In this period of time, all the experts in charge of supervising the middle-level arenas had received Elder Wu's reminder. Once Chen Hao appeared, they must ensure his safety. After all, although there were experts overseeing the arenas, there would still be accidents sometimes. Especially when there were participants that suddenly erupted with their strength, they would be caught unprepared. By the time they reacted, they would have already lost their lives. And Chen Hao dared to challenge Chai Yi, a rank 8 martial saint. It was truly too shocking. It even made this expert feel that Chen Hao's confidence had reached the level of being arrogant and blinded. The majority of the crowd held this thought. The only ones that were filled with anticipation were Yang Fan and the other disciples that came out of the 100 Empire ranking. It was because they were the only ones that had seen Chen Hao's abnormal battle prowess. Especially those powerful absolute skills that came out one after another. They firmly believed that the rank 1 martial saint Chen Hao would have a shocking performance. Furthermore, he had only become a rank 1 martial saint over a month ago. Who knew if such an existence with such abnormal talent had improved again? Third update, last 2 hours. Friends who still have monthly votes, please vote for Dark Mountain. Thank you. Chapter 201. A month has finally passed. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your tips and monthly votes. On the last day, it still exploded. Unwilling to accept it, I can only accept it. My brothers and sisters have done their best, and Wushan has also done their best. After working hard for a month, my body is in serious condition. This month, I will still work hard, but I can't work so hard. Otherwise, I really don't know when I will die. In a month, I smoked 7 cigarettes, used 2 bottles of essential bombs, and had a good night's sleep. This month, I really can't be like this. I need to adjust. Therefore, this month, I will ensure that the last 2 chapters, with intermittent outbursts. Today, the update will be late, probably at night. In the morning, I will go to acupuncture my shoulders and neck. At the same time, I will ask for a guarantee for the last month. Thank you, friends, for your tips this month. Chapter 202. Translator, Trans and Editor, Transin the afternoon sun shone on the mountains of the star-picking sect. Because of Chen Hao's appearance, the outer disciples' arena was bustling with activity that had never been seen before at the beginning of the month. One figure after another flew from the 10 peaks to the arena as fast as light. Cold Gleam soared. In the arena, when Chai Yi and Chen Hao's auras soared to the peak, the great battle finally erupted. Chai Yi shouted, and a 3-inch-long short sword appeared in front of him in a beam of light. Although this short sword was only 3 inches long and appeared to be more like a dagger, its appearance was extremely exquisite. It was exactly the appearance of a treasured sword. As soon as it appeared, a sharp and fierce aura spread out. It was glittering like a crystal, causing people to be unable to look at it directly. Everyone felt waves after waves of sword chi surging and surging with an extremely terrifying might. It can't be, right? Why did senior brother Chai Yi take out the cold gleam sword? Seeing this scene, many disciples who knew Chai Yi revealed shocked expressions. They were clear that this cold gleam sword was Chai Yi's greatest reliance. It was a treasure he had obtained from a fortuitous encounter in an ancient remnant. It was a flying sword with an artifact spirit. Although it was a medial-grade spirit artifact, it was extremely powerful. Especially among the outer disciples, it could be considered a famous treasure. In the past few days, Chai Yi had not used it. However, because of Chen Hao, he had actually taken out the cold gleam sword. Could it be that Chen Hao was already worthy of Chai Yi's caution? The crowd could not understand. This was because the aura that Chen Hao emitted in the arena was far from enough to make them feel terrified. It seemed like he was only an inferior-grade martial sage. Junior brother Chen Hao, be careful. Chai Yi's expression turned grave as he spoke. Others could not sense it. Similarly, he could not sense how strong Chen Hao's aura was. However, he, who was facing his opponent head-on, relied on his sharp intuition to sense a dangerous aura from Chen Hao. When he thought of the rumors about Chen Hao, he did not dare to be careless. Xiao! Xiao! Whoosh! Whoosh! Along with Chai Yi's words, the short and exquisite cold light sword seemed to have a mind of its own. It streaked across the sky like a stream of light, and under the joint control of Chai Yi and the artifact spirit, it directly spiraled and danced at a terrifying speed, condensing into a light shield completely composed of sword light. In an instant, it wrapped Chen Hao in it, sealing him from all directions and constantly closing in. Senior apprentice brother Chai Yi is too much of a bully. He used his ultimate move the moment he made his move. Seeing this, someone in the crowd said, "What bully? That was how it should be." Isn't this Chen Hao merely the runner-up of the 100 Empire ranking, a brat from a low-ranked dynasty of the secular world? He doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and dares to challenge a rank 8 martial saint. Does he really think that we are the same as those idiots on the 100 Empire ranking? From the looks of it, senior apprentice brother Chai Yi just wants to teach this kid a lesson, ha ha ha. Suddenly, a wild howl that reverberated through heaven and earth interrupted the laughter of the person who was speaking. Within that howl, there were surging fluctuations of origin power. It even exploded with a terrifying aura that was as vast as the mountains and seas, spreading out from Chen Hao's body. This is... Countless people suddenly widened their eyes and let out cries of disbelief. How is this possible? The disciple who spoke just now had an even more astonished expression. Rank 9 martial saint. On the stage, the eyes of the expert who was prepared to save Chen Hao flickered with a bright light. He was extremely shocked as he stared at Chen Hao. In the entire martial arts practice field, countless pairs of eyes were firmly staring at Chen Hao, who was howling madly. At this moment, Chen Hao, who was proudly standing on the stage like a mountain, had his star-picking robe fluttering. His hands were spread open, and he raised his head towards the sky. In between his brows, there seemed to be a heavenly gate that could tear apart space. Waves of terrifying aura surged out. Chen Hao's entire body slowly floated into the air. His incomparably valiant strength was like 10,000 horses galloping, like a flash flood erupting. He actually used absolute strength to forcibly crush the cold sword aura that Chai-Yi had condensed. At this moment, Qin Hao was looking down at Chai-Yi from above. His handsome face emitted the arrogance of a ruler descending upon the world. Rank 9 Martial Saint, he actually advanced to rank 9 Martial Saint. How is this possible? This is rank 9 Martial Saint. That's right. Only a rank 9 Martial Saint can open the heavenly gate and begin to connect heaven and earth. He actually advanced to rank 9 Martial Saint. It's only been a little over a month. At this moment, all the disciples were stupefied. They stared at the proudly standing Qin Hao and simply did not dare to believe their eyes. What kind of monster was this? Even Yang Fan and those who were familiar with Qin Hao opened their eyes wide in shock. No one had thought that Qin Hao would be able to advance to such a realm in a little over a month's time. In fact, even Qin Hao himself did not expect this. The treasure-hunting sword spirit also did not expect this. In the month of seclusion, Qin Hao had started from the Azure Dragon. In 7 days, he had completely comprehended and refined it. Furthermore, he had integrated it into the wood attribute spiritual sword. What surprised Qin Hao was that after truly obtaining the Azure Dragon's inheritance, he had broken through the first grade and stepped into the second grade Martial Saint level. According to Qin Hao's estimation, the energy required to step into the third grade from the second grade was several times more majestic than the energy required to advance from the first grade to the second grade. Even after comprehending and refining the White Tiger, it was impossible for him to break through again. However, he had only used 5 days to complete the White Tiger. What surprised him was that he had actually broken through to the third grade Martial Saint level. Moreover, the vermilion bird and the black tortoise that followed had also allowed Qin Hao to break through a grade. At this time, Qin Hao was already very surprised. However, after completing the Qilin, something even more shocking and exciting happened. After the 5 divine beasts had completely integrated into the 5-direction spiritual sword and the Xianhuang ring, a terrifying power that was almost unimaginable to Qin Hao actually erupted. It began to circulate through the Xianhuang ring on its own, allowing Qin Hao to break through the barrier with irresistible force. When he reached the 9th grade Martial Saint level, it finally calmed down, not to mention Qin Hao, even the experienced and knowledgeable treasure-hunting sword spirit did not expect this kind of terrifying advancement. With the 5 elements divine beasts gathered in one body, coupled with the Xianhuang ring, there was a superimposed effect. It was like the additional attributes that appeared after a complete set of combined spiritual weapons had completely erupted in Qin Hao's body, in a short period of 1 month and 10 days, a miraculous advancement. If it weren't for Qin Hao's special body, if it weren't for the 300 body-tempering pills, soul-refining pills, and mind-clearing pills, Qin Hao really didn't know if his dantian and meridians would be able to withstand such a drastic improvement. On the entire mountain peak, there was a huge uproar. Every disciple, including those who had already rushed over, was hysterical, incomparably envious and crazily jealous in their hearts. Especially the disciples who were prepared to watch Qin Hao's show and ridicule him. At this moment, they were as silent as cicadas in winter and did not even dare to fart. 9th grade Martial Saint. Senior. Qin Hao, Chai-Yi admits that he is no match for you. I will not make a fool of myself. Chai-Yi finally came back to his senses, withdrew his cold gleam sword, and said while clasping his fists. Originally, he called him junior brother, but now he directly became senior brother. In the sect, the strong were respected, and those who had reached the top were respected. Those with higher cultivation were the elders, regardless of who entered the sect first. Qin Hao slightly smiled, clasped his fists in return, and did not say anything. Instead, he turned around and looked below the stage. His black eyes were shining with a bright light. No one dared to look at him directly, because everyone knew that the current Qin Hao was waiting for his next opponent. This was only the beginning of the month, and at this moment, Chai-Yi was already considered a top expert. Who could be his opponent? Who dared to fight him? 9th grade Martial Saint. Let me fight you. After a moment of silence, an indifferent voice suddenly came from behind the crowd. A figure slowly rose up, and immediately after, countless disciples burst into bursts of exclamations. Senior Brother Kai Jin. It's actually Senior Brother Kai Jin. Phew. There's a good show to watch now. The crowd immediately burst into a buzz of discussion. No one thought that one of the top 10 experts of the middle disciples, Kai Jin, would appear at this time. Kai Jin, 9th grade martial saint, ranked 10th among the middle disciples of the outer court. If there were no accidents, this year, he would be qualified to enter the second level of the 7 Stars Paradise. However, Qin Hao's appearance threatened his position. Originally, he thought that there was no need for him to make a move. The disciples ranked 10th to 20th would be able to step on Qin Hao and enter the first level. But now, the strength that Qin Hao displayed caused some of the experts who had just arrived to have ugly expressions. They did not dare to act blindly without thinking. It was obvious that they did not have the confidence to defeat Qin Hao, and no one wanted to be the first to make a move. This was because Chai Yi, who was ranked 97th, had not tested Qin Hao's true strength. The gazes of these disciples were all focused on Kai Jin. Thus, when he saw Qin Hao standing proudly on the stage, Kai Jin had no choice but to make a move. Although these people were his competitors, they were also his helpers. It was inevitable for him to test the waters. Otherwise, even if Qin Hao defeated them, he would still be able to push Kai Jin down. After all, he had received accurate information that as long as Qin Hao entered the top 20, he would have the qualifications to replace him. In a short month, he has advanced to rank 9 martial saint. He does indeed have some ability. However, I believe that the sect master must have given him enormous benefits. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to advance so quickly. Pulling up seedlings to help them grow, building castles in the air. No matter what, I must seriously injure him, or even, kill him. This is the safest way, right? Kai Jin's expression was calm, but his eyes were flickering with a threatening light. He stared at Qin Hao as he slowly descended onto the stage. The killing intent in his heart was hidden extremely well. Originally, he did not have the intention to kill Qin Hao. However, at this moment, Qin Hao had suddenly advanced to rank 9 martial saint. This was something that he did not expect. It was better to rely on oneself than on others. There was no sense of security when one's fate was in the hands of others. If Qin Hao was only a rank 1 or 2 martial saint, it would be one thing. Kai Jin believed that the disciples ranked within the top 20, or even the top 50, would be able to defeat him. However, it was clearly impossible now. Thus, he could only rely on himself. Although there were experts in the arena, accidents could still happen. Especially for disciples who had the intention to kill their opponents, there was a high chance of success. Even if he succeeded, it would not affect him. The responsibility would be on the expert guarding the stage. Part 1. I was frightened today. The doctor said that my entire back is stiff. First, I used fire treatment, then I applied medicine and scraping sand. Next, I let out blood. I used needles and stabbed several areas on my back. Then, I placed a transparent fire pot on it. The blood really spurted out. The entire fire pot was dyed red. Although it was frightening, I felt that my back was much more relaxed after the treatment. I also felt more energetic when I wrote. I will try to finish the second chapter before 12. Finally, please recommend me and guarantee me a monthly vote. It's not very strong, but if you want to support Dark Mountain, then you should vote for Dark Mountain to encourage them. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.